Hey, Colin.
Can you hear me? Yes, it's working.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know. That time it was a new problem.
Still always reconfiguring your machines?
No, well, this USB mic, once I plug it in, I have to push it twice on cue. It goes audio card, audio card. I got to hit the audio and then select the time zone. It's a really cool mic, but anyway,
What mic are you using?
it's a Zoom H1 old school. It's a digital microphone.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's you can use it for note taking or music production. It's kind of a versatile thing.
Mhm.
Pop a
They're coming through nicely now. I use a USB mic myself. I use a Blue Snowball.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, this one I got at the music store. It was on sale for like $100. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago.
Hmm.
It's like they have really cool ones. Like they got the Zoom have some really professional digital microphones. But anyway, it's got the double polar axis thing going on there.
Mm-hmm. Omnidirectional.
Yeah. Well, it's got an X and Y mic pointed at perpendicular,
Got it. Got it.
pseudo omnidirectional. But
I
yeah,
have
it's pretty good.
a dandy little Sony device, DVR, voice recorder, that
Okay.
actually is structured that way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It does work really good. I wish I had more time to play. This is my play here. This is one of the things I give myself. The meeting with the people online. I find it multi-purposed. Even if we don't get too far, I think the effort is worth it.
I think each of us takes from it what each wants to take from it, and then we're looking to see whether or not there's more.
Yeah, trying to align and coexist is an interesting thing when nobody's forcing you to do it. So I find that the people here are you could almost call them friendly or friends as opposed to just people to meet with because even though you may disagree with the people, you tend to like them. So
Well, we're trying to disagree well. That's my intent anyway.
well, yeah, and I feel that deeply as well.
Yeah, cool. I actually, as is my preference, I actually was awake enough to actually have some prepared thoughts for today. But we could either go into it or we could sit around and chit chat, wait for others to show up. I know that Glenn usually likes to come. He's mentioned that before. As you know, Alex is usually here. Surprisingly, Just Winter's been not here for the last two or three times. Although he, up till then, was very, very regular.
Yeah, I don't know. He's it's also the seasons are getting colder, more things to do to get ready for winter as well.
Yeah,
People have things to do. Summer's over.
yeah, definitely. Although the colors are really, really welcome. I really like what the colors are doing.
Yeah, it's nice. There's some trees that are holding on. A lot of them have lost their leaves here now.
Hmm.
It's been very rainy and windy. That usually takes care of a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Joshua is usually here, although he usually pops in for a little bit and then takes off.
Yeah.
And then Les has been coming somewhat regularly. Dave G sometimes comes and listens for a while and never says anything, curiously.
Yeah, I'm expecting someday he's going to have a thesis.
Oh, he's
He,
probably collecting thoughts for his next book.
well, yeah, he's into complexity theory, is he not? Somewhat. I don't know if he's the same guy I met at DigLife or not. I was there a few times,
Yeah.
but I think he was the guy I was talking to that was giving me lots of titles. Maybe not. I've got a map of a whole bunch of complex theory books that I can read someday if I ever want to. But yeah, it's very. There's so many different directions one can go, and I'm just trying to start at the basics. And I think you're there as well. Um,
I'm
I
trying to
haven't.
find the basics.
I Yeah, I have enough. I have enough in my professional life to keep me busy with projects and things, and to try to introduce them here is very difficult. Unless you hit it off with somebody. I think the closest person to that I found was probably you and Heiner, Doug to some extent, although I'm surprised Doug is he must be quite busy. I thought we were going to have a little go at trying to figure out what we mean by agreement and disagreement and see if we could get some syntactical handlebars on that. But
Well, as you know, I'm still very willing to do that. I think the question has been, how much do we want to pre-structure that conversation? So when it was proposed, I felt that it was a thing to resolve regarding disagreement. I did not realize until later that it was kind of an experiment on your part
yeah,
to work on tooling and that sort of thing. So those two are distinct objectives. And while, yes, you can make it opportunistic and do it both, then really you're trying to optimize two different things. The people who are trying to get at disagreement would optimize a certain way. And you, if you're trying to build a tool and design a tool, would optimize a different way. So that, I think, is the disconnect, it appears to me.
yeah, and I think the fact that we haven't really, discussed that much, other than everybody sees what they see, and I think I've been seeing over some time, as you mentioned, Joshua has mentioned as well before, that there's a need for this kind of a forum to, try to get on the same page or find out how we can agree or disagree. It seems that there's a lot of speeches, but not a whole lot of agreements. I know Doug says a whole lot of things, and then when you try to get into the meat of it, there's never enough time, or it's just not a very good forum to do that. So that's why I was thinking if we set up a very open-ended, semi-structured talk where we could keep one point at a time and try to move ahead. So not so much have a constraint on the conversation of where it could go, more of a, as I was mentioning, and I had mentioned to you, I think a few weeks ago, we had a discussion about how to go about, chasing down, whether it be truth or whether it be a topic trail that one could map out in a way that other people could follow, be it with, video chunks. Like, I think there's a lot that we could, I was planning on going back and grabbing a few of the chunks from a few weeks ago. The farther back it goes, the harder it is to find, But I do think you guys stated your cases in that discussion, and I saw it as a great example, which is what I'm trying to do, not so much as
Yeah, I think
design on the spot, but
it was 2 Sundays ago, and it was late in the session. I have it. I have it clearly in mind. I know exactly when you're talking about.
yeah, that would be a good way to set up, a little bit. That would be a bit of the setup. Another one would be just to probably, I would think it'd be better to get a definition of what each person meant by that before we started, and have that trail started, mutually agreeing, of course. That's the thing. I don't want to just do it all myself and spring it on you. And I think that's what Doug might be possibly thinking I had in mind, because all of my maps are quite fleshed out, or busy, you could say. And that's definitely not the intention. The intention is just to try to, instead of having you two guys as a host, trying to host everybody else and give tidbits of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Flip it like the session where you guys are the guests, and it's all about you guys, nothing to do with me and my game or whatever. That the game is kind of a red herring, and I would think in this situation. I would say that there's 3 or 4 different ways I could envision mapping out a thought journey. And, one would be a debate, and I would hope that we wouldn't get into a debate style, but the map would be able to accommodate a small debate or disagreement, you could say, because debates are disagreements on the face. So, and if everybody's agreeing, then we can even flush that out. So I think the idea is to steelman each person's position so that each person is understood well in their frame, in their context. So nobody is poisoning the well, or how do you say, straw manning, basically allowing people to show their worldview and put their context around it. So someone could say, well, I can see how you feel that way, but I live in a different culture and we don't actually do things that way here. So that wouldn't be my first inclination, but I see why you would want to do that and why that would be important. One of the things I see between you, hello, Alex. One thing I see between you and Doug is he likes to start, I think, at a layer more emotional with how you've been raised in your fear context that you've been raised within. I think fear is a big motive, a big explanation for why people are motivated to do or understand the way they understand or driven to act. So, I think that is very valuable. And I think within there's a nuance where agreement could be had instead of just saying, well, I see it this way. Because you guys have been having this kind of a disagreement for quite some time. That's why I was hoping that you understood when I said I wanted to do examples as much as experiments of how one could go step by step, which is basically the first rule. Just don't say a whole bunch of things such that you can't follow up on it. Right? That's one point. And the other point is to definitely give each person their space without other people interrupting. As in having like 10 different ideas in the room. There's only one idea in the room.
Well, you're not the only one. Many people have, I think, observed that I'm one of the consistent participants here. In fact, I moderate, at least this Saturday thing. And Doug is a very consistent player in this space. He moderates Thursdays and Sundays, maybe even Fridays now. I don't even know. So when Doug and I have an apparent disagreement, which happens fairly frequently, rather than just let it slide and give the space over to whomever wants to speak at that point, it's happened frequently enough around similar topics that I felt it would be useful to myself as well as to Doug and to the community that we really dig more into it. Otherwise, it just becomes the same old conversation over and over and over.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's what I was trying to prevent, is just the same repetitive, oh, you would disagree, I disagree. Well, let's just, live with it. I'm not saying that that's not okay. I'm just saying that isn't an opportunity to lean in and learn more. So I'm trying to lean in and learn more, and possibly also personally to demonstrate how you disagree well. I personally would love to do that. So my motivation is there. I would really much want to do that.
Yeah, and my idea is that I could interrupt to say, okay, that's a really good point. Let's write that down and position it. Should we position it here or should we position it there? Okay, now what do you, sort of point by point. But yeah, if somebody has a diatribe, it's pretty hard to map that out.
See, I think that that would actually be somewhat disruptive to the flow of a conversation.
It would be. It would be.
Hold up. Let me just put it down here. Should I put it 1 inch to the left, 1 inch to the right? Should I make it green? Should I make it yellow? That would, I think, not allow the flow, it seems. That, I think, is possibly what Doug might be objecting to.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh. Hey, Alex. Hey, Alex. You've got a chipmunk voice again. A couple years ago this happened to you. Or
that's Jazzwinder.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, you've got a chipmunk voice right now.
Yeah. How is it now?
Okay, now it's back to normal.
Okay. From agreement to disagreement is a series of steps. So if you have a stairwell with, say, 5 or 10 steps on it, the bottom step's disagreement, the top step's agreement. So you need to make a skeleton of where you are, where each party is at, on which step is each party on that run. Then you can shift, then you can change position, because if you don't know where you are, it's hard to change position. So map out those steps and see who's at the bottom step with disagreement and who's tending to the top of the flight of stairs where the agreement is 100% agreement. I mean, the bottom step might not be total disagreement, it might be just subject to certain disagreements. Over.
Yeah, to me, that sounds like a model of state change, that you can actually move from one state to another with intervening states. But I think there's another set of models that could be used to complement that, which would be to sort of indicate how you move from stage to stage. Because just knowing that you're in disagreement is not guidance about how you move to agreement if that's what you really want. Maybe you want to stay in disagreement. Maybe you want to, move towards war. There's a different motivation there. So there's many models that I think that we can bring to bear here, all of which requires an interest in motivation and people doing so. Josh, what's up for you today?
Hello, Josh. There might have been two guys arguing about the yin-yang symbol. One of them wanted it 100% white. The other one wanted it 100% black. So they compromised.
Neither of them would have been qualified to create that design.
Speaking on yin yang, the reason I fell in love with that is because of Niels Bohr. He's the famous physicist who put it on his coat of arms. And I had this burning question for 3 years. Why did he put it on his coat of arms? The greatest physicist, greater than Einstein. Why would that be the symbol?
Wow.
So after studying it for, yeah.
Yeah.
It is quite amazing.
Yeah.
If he was a scientist, then it might have been something to do with the fact that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
I think that's Newton.
That's actually Voltaire, but that's not the point. The point is I sat there and drew it until I went crazy and insane, and it was 3 a.m. and I had drawn it for 5 hours. And then I just jumped on my motorcycle and started driving, and then got to the top of a mountain and there was a cloud, and I figured out why he did it and what it was. And it was beyond my understanding. And now I understand it, but at the time when I was 26, I couldn't get it. It's a very complicated, it's gauge symmetry is what the yin yang sign is. I don't know if you guys, do you study gauge symmetry at all, Sam? I'm curious to know, or Colin or Alex.
Symmetry, but there are many ways to arrive at the yin yang. Gauge symmetry might be one. I have to be more
two-dimensional. Yeah, 2-dimensional is easy, but I'm talking about 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional or 5-dimensional yin yang signs.
That's when you end up
which
with the
ends
torus.
Up being the.
Have you seen the torus from the top down? Yeah.
But you can keep going after the torus. That's 40.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an awesome sign. I was just trying to segue to say hi. Nice to see you guys. I got a head cold. It's freaking freezing. It's been below freezing when the sun drops up here. So. Yeah, and I woke up sleeping with a dog, so that was it was a 1-dog night last night.
Dogs are warm blankets, aren't they?
And Sam had a 14-dog night. How many dogs in the Sam's night?
I've got 12 dogs here now. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the agenda today, Sam? I don't want to distract from the conversation. I'm just saying hello.
Okay, so last week there were many things that got brought up that got deferred because we spent most of it talking about Glenn's vision and thoughts. And I had 2 thoughts that I wanted to use to possibly stimulate the conversation today, and they are very much connected. I'll introduce the first one, okay? And it almost has to do with this stage model that Alex was talking about earlier, okay? But the way I would ask the question is, I'll ask 3 questions, okay, in succession, and let's see what you think about this. And answer them all at the same time, and I'd like to hear from each of you. 1, when you meet someone less enlightened than you, how do you feel? How do you treat that person? And how do you know that person is less enlightened than you are? The second question, which is related to that, is when you...
That was 3 questions, Sam.
Yes, that is 3 questions. So I'm actually going to take the second part of that, which is another 3 questions, which is, when you meet someone more enlightened than you, how do you feel? how do you know that they're more enlightened than you? And how do you treat them? That's one topic I'd like to bring up for discussion today. Josh, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just thought about the word enlightened, and I figured if my light is shining brighter than the other person, I try not to burn them. And then I check their, metaphorically speaking, from knowledge standpoint, I check their skin and see if I'm toasting them or if they're toasting me. That's how I know if they're more enlightened than me or I'm more enlightened than them. And I try to slowly turn on the light as opposed to just, whoa, or vice versa. Whoa, oh my God, you're too enlightened. So that's my answer for both of those questions. And that's how I know. How do I feel? What was the three questions? How do I know? How do I feel? And
how do you treat them?
I treat them gently like I would any creature on this planet. Just try not to burn their skin off, or try not to let them burn my skin off with their knowledge.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Metaphorically speaking.
I like the answer.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a shot?
If I meet somebody on the road who appears to be more enlightened or less enlightened, I don't make a judgment on their level, because I could be thinking I'm more enlightened, but in fact be less enlightened than the person I'm talking to, especially if they're a Buddhist. So I haven't got a position to make that judgment from. So I just meet them on the level playing field, because they're at that stage of enlightenment they're at. That's where they're at. And my stage of enlightenment is where I'm at. We are each where we are at. Nothing's going to change that until the teacher appears. If the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And then the conversation can proceed from that state of play. Over.
Thank you, Alex. I would appreciate that.
Less enlightened. Well, this is a hard one. It depends on obviously on what the topic is, because you're not an expert. Nobody's an expert on everything. Although there are levels of, I would say, mindfulness that you can step back from your emotions and have an honest inquiry. So I think that's the way I treat most everything, unless I'm threatened. If in this forum, I would be curious and ask questions, thought experiments, try to find the understanding, which is kind of what I was hoping to do with you and Doug. I don't picture the enlightenment more or less. I would consider it different, enlightened differently. Now, there is something they say about not picking on people who maybe, they say, what's the term, punching down. You got to be careful about that. And, there's political forum, it's a lot of disagreement there, where one could say, you just don't know what you're talking about. And again, that's very subjective, which may or may not be enlightened. I think an informed citizenry is what makes for good decisions. So I think education and being informed is number one. So you do look at somebody's education around what they're talking about, and try not to judge a book by its cover. So, yeah, I think it's through discussion. Some people are just too emotional to have discussions with. The number one test case for enlightened people, I think, is, can they have a discussion about religion without getting all upset? And it seems to me more enlightened people seem to be less religious. Didn't say less spiritual, because there's that human element we don't really know about. So with the yin yang, that's very interesting. I'll just end with this. I do use that recently as a model to try to explain to somebody why a white lie might be okay. where they say a lie is a lie and there's no excuse for a lie. And if I have to lie, then I don't feel I did the right thing, although I might do it anyway to save somebody's feelings. Where I was surprised. I thought that they would say, well, I would do it to save somebody's feelings and I would feel okay about it. They said I would do it, but I wouldn't feel okay about it. It is the kind of thing where part of the white lie definition is it is a little bit uncomfortable, but you shouldn't. I think that anyway, I can use the yin yang to make two contexts where one side would be scientific, where a lie is a lie and it's not acceptable, and the other one is more of a cultural side where it's a little bit more of an interpretation, and that's why politics can get away with lying and where white lies live as well. Because if you were a scientist, you couldn't lie and get away with what Donald Trump's getting away with. There's just no way. I wouldn't think. But yeah, I learn new things every day. So lying scientists don't seem to be very successful. Maybe I'm wrong.
Are there political scientists?
I think they're the most successful when they can lie.
Yeah, Josh.
I'm just curious. I hear a lot of your own words, Colin, and I also heard Jordan Peterson come out of you. I was just wondering if you've been listening to Jordan Peterson lately.
I listen to a lot of people. I think Jordan Peterson's far on the right, and I am what I would call a liberal. I no longer consider myself a leftist with all this crazy identity politics going on. I do agree with him on the identity politics, but you can find correct statements from a lot of people. Again, the disagreement agreement idea. There's many people I disagree with on certain things where there'd be a lot of statements they make I would agree with. So you have to really parse it out. I agree with this and I agree with this, but that doesn't mean I agree with the next thing you're going to say. And I find that a lot with Jordan Peterson. So no, that was just me talking about, I've been discussing a lot, trying to figure ways to agree and disagree. Like that is a theme with me, with some people that I discuss things with that, I have some fundamentalist friends, and it's very interesting to be friends with them. And when you start to discuss things, it gets very emotional. And I say, well, why is it getting so emotional? And it's like, anyway, it's very interesting. So enlightened, yeah, that's a really hard one, Sam. I think what we can do is just treat people fairly, and I think the scientific method is the way I go about it, unless it is something where you're consoling somebody and then you just console them, and I don't think enlightenment really matters. I think science on one side is the enlightenment of the yang. On the other side, it's, I would say emotional intelligence would be in the enlightenment. So you got to pick which one you use depending on which side of the circle you're on. And a lot of times it's mixed.
Can we
so there you go.
Sorry, Josh, were you saying
Is that
something?
possible, Sam?
What?
I was just asking if you could define the word enlightenment, just because I've heard it defined in religious and also in many, many different contexts. So
Yeah, so I
How
was
would you
actually
define
surprised that it took a few minutes before that question came up. I actually can't define enlightenment. That's one of these curious words that's used a number of different ways. And I don't feel like I can impose a definition of enlightenment on people. I'm just curious what that brings up. Because there's definitely this scale of enlightenment. One feels like one ought to move towards more enlightenment. That's usually what the word implies. And it also implies that most people are not enlightened. That's the other implication here. And so that's why I just decided to use the word and see what came up rather than define it. I didn't want to define it a priori. Just like the word good, right? You could use the same question. How do you know when you meet someone who is more good than you are? Or how do you know that someone is less good than you are? Maybe an extreme would be Trump.
do you mind
Yeah, go ahead.
if I redefine that question instead of less good or more good? How do you measure? That's what the real question that we're asking here is, how do you measure engagement with another human being, and what measurement tools do you use for X, Y, and Z. And one X could be enlightenment, Y could be good, Z could be nice, you know, engagement. How do you dialogue? How do you communicate your existence, your consciousness? Please go ahead, Alex.
Well, this question is due to a person's words and the difference between their words and their actions. If you haven't known a person very long, you can't judge them by their actions. You don't really know what their actions are until you've seen them happening in real life. Then you can say, well, this person does what they say they're going to do, right? Their words match their actions. So getting back to the disagreements versus agreement, there's an acceptance factor. I can disagree with somebody and not necessarily, but actually accept the premise on which they're basing their supposition. I can accept it without having to agree with it, because there may be other factors I've got to look into that I haven't, you know, that are holding me back. Experiences and experiments that bring a different light onto a fact. So there's an agreement policy that uses acceptance and letting go. If I have a really deep belief in an old idea and somebody comes along with something that enlightens me, I've got to accept it and let go of the old idea. That can be difficult. And that's why some people talk about enlightenment as having a transformation, a profound personal transformation in the mind and in the heart, that kind of enlightenment. And but other people report a slow, gradual change in their view on life. And they also refer to that as enlightenment too. So there are variations involved. And Colin's right, it does get complex. So that's why I don't have to, but I often roll myself back to the simplicity view and say, okay, that one's good. No, the one in the shadow is good. The one in the light is not so good, depending on what view you're coming from. If you've got a history of deep religious, spiritual experiences, you'll have one view. If you haven't, you'll have a different view. It's conditioning.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alex. For me, I think there's this belief that this is a complex situation. And I'd like to understand whether it truly is a complex situation, or I go back on my view of complexity. Complexity is a word that we use to describe people, not situations, in my view. It describes our ability to understand situations or to model situations. That's in my view, okay? So if we have a model that can describe and predict reality, then we say it's not complicated. We already understand it. But if we don't have a model, we usually say it's it's too complicated. We don't understand it. So to me, complexity is a word that reflects back on myself and my inability to understand something. So with that as a personal belief, and statement, I'd like to suggest that what we're looking for is some kind of consistency. And why are we looking for consistency? In other words, if we believe that someone values truth or logical consistency, then that person probably would not state falsehoods or lies or make broken promises, right? But maybe there's a different kind of consistency that other people operate by. Like, for example, just in the last week or two, there was an article posted to GCC that said, truth or facts or science don't so much determine what one believes so much as their friends, right? It's a cultural thing. All my friends believe something, therefore I'm going to believe it. Another is people who seem personally inspired by something, It's beautiful to believe in, this multicolored notion of God because it, is beautiful in some sense. So I think the difference is what we value in consistency. And I think that consistency is sought because we're trying to predict what someone would do. In other words, if someone says, I'm going to go pick up some ice cream for you at the store, then if I believe that person believes in truth, believes in integrity, et cetera, then I can say, okay, at some time, probably 30 to 60 minutes from now, I'm going to have some ice cream handed to me. Okay. So that's the consistency that I think we're looking for in the world. When it comes to somebody who does not value truth, it looks to me like they're valuing a different kind of consistency. That's the only way I can even begin to understand people who tell lies all the time. And Trump comes to mind. Okay. And I say this as a matter of curiosity right now. It's not a matter of judgment. I'm just saying, what is it that this guy is trying to be consistent with in his life? The only thing I can come up with is holding on to power. That seems to be a consistent theme. So you say what you need in order to hold on to power. And if it's effective, who cares if it's true? It serves your purpose of holding on to power. And if I look at it through that lens, things become a quote unquote a lot more understandable than to assume that the guy values truth. Obviously, the guy does not value truth. Don't keep saying that. It's not going to matter to him that you say you're lying. He doesn't value honesty. So what I'm trying to figure out is, what is that thing that's consistent? So Trump is an extreme example, but in personal interactions, I'm also trying to figure out, where is that consistency? Where is that alignment internally to the other person that, if I see it, would allow me to understand that person's thoughts and behaviors and statements a bit more clearly? And that's the question behind these other questions that I'm asking. Over. Colin, you had your hand up, and then Josh moved in.
Yeah, very much so. So I see it as in, you're looking for consistency. I see the consistency when you start to get more methodical about being understood. Politicians don't go out to try to be understood. And as soon as they bring up the facts, everybody gets bored. Campaigns are run on emotions and one-liners. As soon as somebody comes out trying to unveil their plan of what they're going to do, it's like everybody's bored and turns the channel. As soon as they start fighting, everybody starts watching. I think that's a pretty good truism with why we get such drivel in debates. For example, the debate that I would see between you and Doug would be one where you both were leaning in to try to understand as opposed to just win the debate. So it wouldn't really be a debate. It would just, have those boundaries. With looking for truth, it's relative. What is better? What is good? What is enlightenment? These are all subjective. When you look at the different levels of existence, there's the cosmos, there's the human experience, and then there's the molecular experience. So we don't really relate to the molecular experience. We don't really relate to the cosmic experience. We relate to the human experience. Very anthropomorphic experience, which is, I would say, probably 75% cultural and 25% scientific. Just they're throwing numbers out there. And in order to get to the essence, one has to play the game of understanding and become more scientific. And that's why you say you're looking for consistency. I'm thinking the anti-focus for the consistency of people who are looking for certainty. They want their certainty. They don't want to let go. They want to understand how things work. So I find a lot of discussions, and Doug asked me, and the question was last Sunday, am I speaking to the people in the room, or am I speaking to an audience at large? And I think both. Because I don't think you can change somebody. You can give them reasons to think, and it could take them some time, and they may come around to your way of thinking, but it's a matter of experience and education and the ability to actually, or you should say the personality. So that's the other thesis I have in this forum is people adapters, or ways to bring people together. If somebody or two people with very different worldviews or very different personalities, how are they going to sit down and discuss something scientifically? And they aren't, unless it's important and they have a really good reason to. If they just want to be right, it's just going to be a lot of what I experience here, actually. So, you know, I thought I would try something different and ease into it with you and Doug. I saw it as a great opportunity to get one example of how this could unfold. Whether we get to understand what you two mean, I assume that would happen. Whether it would be breaking up the flow of someone's comfortable rant, yes, it would break up their rant and it would be uncomfortable for them. They would have to play within the rules of one point at a time. Or does the other person understand what you just said and agree? Like, can we take, you know, can each person get one roll of the dice at a turn and not just get 7 rolls of the dice, and then, you know, try to make it more fair, and mapping out what you want to have understood more than who's right. Understand what I'm saying first, and then we can discuss what's right or wrong. And it depends on the culture again, right? So it's extremely complicated. That's why I like to have some examples. Another example besides the white lie example, which I could start with a model. I think models are very important here, and lines of inquiry. But another model besides the white lie is the question of, I'll let somebody else speak. I'll come back to another question, but yeah, it's very much, the question of religion, where homosexuality comes into the judgment, and our society is starting to accept homosexuals. Most of the globe is, and I would like to see it as a point where it's not really a consideration. If you're not homosexual, why should it really matter to you? Why is it any of your business? And then as somebody who is very religious starts to accept that, how can they compartmentalize the fact that it's still an abomination, but I'm okay with it, but it's an abomination? If it's abomination, that means you're not okay with it. Like, what do you mean by the word abomination? Do you mean just kind of uncomfortable? So, you know, it's these definitions of terms that people are willing to slide around and smooth over without even really considering what they're saying. I think that's like a huge part of it. So that's why when you say, well, what do you mean by abomination? Can I have your definition? Well, it's something that is just horrific, that should not be. Then, okay, so are you okay with it or not? Well, I am okay with it. So then you don't agree with what's in the Bible. Well, I do. And this causes a lightning inside their head, and they get very angry. And it's not my intention. So maybe some people, it's just best not to speak about it.
Josh, you had your finger up, and Alex, you had your finger up.
Earlier, I was given one of these, and that just means I hear you, I got you. I'm trying to do what Colin's talking about. Is everyone understanding? So I try to give this signal. I understand what you're saying, or if I don't, I'm leaning in. Okay, I'm listening. Oh, got it. So that's the way I'm communicating on this visual and audio platform. But learning how to communicate, I mean, I don't know, this just goes on forever. I love philosophy talk. I think it's wonderful, and we can get into logic and reason and how we interpret the world. But it's much like when I was working in the health field with the microbiome. Each human being is turning on and turning off genes and expressions of those genes. So no matter how much science we put into understanding the physiology of that person at that given moment, a gene could flip on, and 20 minutes later, they could break out in hives because they're allergic to a type of nut allergy that they don't even know about. And so to me, it's always analogous to the model of shoe size. We tried to say that everybody's feet are either size 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but really there's a lot of measurement in between 11 and a half and 12, or 10 and a half and 10 and 3/4. And I don't know if you guys remember being a kid and going to the shoe store. They used to have that little thing you put your feet into, and they don't seem to have that anymore. I noticed. It's kind of interesting that we don't actually put our feet into that little thing and squeeze it and get the, so measuring someone's engagement, enlightenment, conversational, logical, truth, white lie ability is like measuring how much someone knows how to interact in the reality that they're given at any given moment. And that's the complication, is it changes. So, and I feel like studying comedians and how they do what they do on stage, they're not really comedians, they're hypnotists. And they're hypnotizing you into a trance of a story or a setup and a punchline, and they're changing your central nervous system from your intrinsic to your parasympathetic to shock it and make you laugh. And that's almost like being a shaman or a hypnotist. And I think when you're engaging with people and you want to get a point across, there's many ways to have power over, so you're controlling the story or allowing the story to unfold. And here at the GCC, you know, open Thursdays, it just can unfold. Friday could be experiment. Saturday's supposedly a barn raising, but today feels more like a philosophy talk, which I'm okay with. Like, I'm not judging it. I don't know how to engage at this moment other than to say, good to see you guys and let's all learn together. So if there's things that we need to learn in order to build a barn or whatever, in order to be a community, let's learn those things and share them. And hopefully if something good comes out of here, I'll try to write it down and share it with a larger audience so more people know. And I'm curious to ask you, Sam, how did the experiment go with putting things live on YouTube? Is there more views? I don't know the stats or the metrics on the YouTube channel. Have you been putting the GCC videos
I think
live?
we barely started. So let me answer that last point, is that I did share the public YouTube channel with Doug. To my knowledge, I don't think he's put any of the Thursday or Friday sessions up there yet. So I have 3 or 4 weeks of the Saturdays and Sunday sessions and have not reviewed the stats. On initial review, each is getting somewhere around 24 views, okay? Before that, it would be probably in the 8 to 15 range. So there might be a slight uptick, but nothing really remarkable, okay? So that's anecdotal. I haven't gone back to really, systematically check the analytics. I could do that, but I haven't done that yet, okay? Second point is, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that to me, there's a reason for asking the questions that I did. Because in all the conversations on Facebook, and these conversations and other conversations, there appears to be, I'll use the word disagreement, about how these conversations should go, right? Everyone has their own notion of what a productive meeting would look like. And everyone has a notion of, well, what part of the meeting is non-productive. And non-productive could be a number of different things. It could be not aligned with my expectations, or I already know that, that's not a surprise, or, I don't understand the point of this, what point is this person trying to make? So we lean out at those moments. And so I'm finding that almost any topic generates a wide dynamic of reactions from people who are piling on to say, yep, really good stuff, I like it, you're right there, blah, 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 to other people saying, yeah, it's been done before, it doesn't work, I tried it way back a long time ago, blah, 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 to other people saying, hey, what's the point of this? And, how come it doesn't lead us towards a barn, or blah, blah, blah. Now, the reason I asked those two questions is because one of my themes here is, how do we present ourselves to collaboration? How do we present ourselves to conversation? How do we present ourselves to a team or to a project or to an activity or a community or a region or a government or, anything, right? And part of that has to do with not just what rules am I willing to follow between us. Rules like interruptions, rules like definitions, rules like, 2-minute talks versus 10-minute talks, all those rules. But to me, the more important thing is how do we present ourselves with our internal preparation? What am I willing to do myself? What am I taking responsibility for? What am I understanding as I bring myself to this conversation? So that's where I'm really interested in understanding myself. And I would hope that others are interested in understanding both themselves as well as me, so that they can say, okay, so what kind of conversation are we going to have? And if there's a topic set, are we going to focus on that topic? If it's a free ranging thing, how are we going to free range? Okay, so back to the topic of why those questions, okay? Those questions were for me a way to lead to a real different, very different set of questions. The next question I would have asked if Josh had not asked his question, okay, but now I'm giving context for it, is what is the first conscious thing you remember learning? Not as a body motor habit, but what is the first conscious thing you remember learning that you said, this is different. I now understand this. I'm curious what that experience looks like. And secondly, how old were you? So Amanda, I'm asking two questions. What is the first thing that you consciously remember learning? And number two, how old were you? So I'm setting this up for a later question, okay? So I'm just wanting to sort of motivate it this way. Anybody with any responses to those two questions? Alex, you have your finger up.
The first thing I remember learning, I was less than a year old because I was still a baby in my cot, right? You could hold on to the bars of the cot. And I would have a nightmare dreaming that I was falling through space in the cot and everything in the blackness of space falling and rocks going past on the outside. And that was strange. That was like a nightmare. And I learned that I could stop myself from doing that and wake up and go back to sleep normally. I could break that nightmare. So I learned something there. And it was mind power, I guess. It's a matter of thinking your way out of it somehow.
Okay. So if I could recap, number one, it's that you could stop your nightmare and wake yourself up. And two, you were about 1 year old. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually going to give my answer right now, okay? Because I'm not proud of this, but I'm going to give you my answer to this, okay? I was probably 14, the very first time I consciously learned something, okay? And what I learned was that I didn't have an original thought in my entire existence until I was about 14. And that to me was disappointing. That everything that I was thinking, believing had come from somebody else. I didn't actually know what thought in my brain was actually something I could claim I created. And that was probably the first anti-thought that I created. And that was about 14 years old. So I'm really curious. This is why I'm curious. Yeah, sorry.
Did it teach you anything?
Sorry, we're all three speaking at the same time. Josh, you were saying something?
I just said that's absolutely fascinating, Sam, that you came to that realization at 14, that you had the ability to self-reflect, go back to everything that you know, and ask yourself the question, is this coming from me, or is these things that were taught to me? And then that allowed you to have what you're defining as your first conscious thought. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, it was disappointing to come up with at 14.
The question I had was, what did it teach you something? And what was that something?
It taught me that most of my thoughts came from someplace else. And that led to a thought that said, maybe I should think about these thoughts that I'm being taught and really consider whether or not I really want to think them. Amanda, you have a response.
Yeah, I wonder now, when was the first time you felt asynchronic, how you say that? Asynchronicity, something not congruent, how you say that, in your life? Because that should have triggered your thoughts, or maybe a little bit before.
Something was incongruent, that was not consistent with my experience or my expectations.
Well, also things that are not, yeah, maybe, or things that are obviously not the same way as you are told they are.
Okay, I'll give you exactly what that was, okay?
Yeah.
When I was 3 years old, as is my habit every morning because I live with my grandparents, I went to go visit I went to go wake up my grandfather. He didn't wake up.
Yeah, that's a big one. And how old were you?
I was about 3.
Yeah, so you see, that's maybe
Maybe 4,
you were learning there
3 and a
too.
half. I was 3 and a half. So that was shall you use the word asynchronous?
Yes.
It was incongruous with my life up until that moment, which was, hey, I go wake up grandpa and he wakes up and, he takes me various different places.
Yeah.
That was different.
So I remember people telling me things that were obviously not true. So I think my parents got divorced reasonably early. And before that, I was wondering, looking at their picture, I was thinking they're not the same now. So they were not as happy as on the picture. So something's wrong. And then there's lots of those moments. And I can also remember, for example, that when I was around, I don't know, small, that my horizon was changing from looking underneath to the top of the chair to just being a little bit taller and looking downward. So there's these sort of experiences that I would say that are moments of conscious learning, because it's obviously you noticed.
Yeah.
And it was the first moment of like, what's going on here?
So was that your first conscious thing that you remember learning? And how old were you?
Well, I don't know, the chair moment, maybe I was just small because I just was growing, maybe I was 4 or something. And the other moment with the picture was I was 5. And then I remember maybe things with a doll or a word. And then I was much smaller. But it's hard to get it back.
Okay, so Glenn, welcome. I have 2 questions on the table here, okay? And 3 of us have already gone with responses. So I'm curious to see if the other 3 would like to share. The question is, what is the first thing that you consciously remember learning? And how old were you? In other words, conscious meaning it's not body memory, it's not muscle memory, it's something you consciously internalized with a thought. I'm curious, what was that experience? What did you learn? And how old were you? If you'd like to participate. But then I think Colin hasn't gone, and I'm not sure yet. I heard from at least another.
Yeah. But it's consciously remember, right? It's not consciously know that you consciously learned it sometimes because it was told to you, and then it was a conscious action, learning from others. That's also existing.
Well, I'm just saying what you learned. I'm not saying how you learned. I'm just saying, what did you learn, and were you conscious of it, and how old were you? There's a reason I'm asking.
My mother told me I knew the clock because she was telling me in advance when I was a baby, like, no, don't cry. I'll come back in 15 minutes. And exactly in 15 minutes, I would come back. So that's a conscious learning. I just don't remember it. Right?
Amanda, remind me at 10 o'clock to terminate the call.
And if you were 3 years old when you experienced your grandfather passing away, you would have been acutely aware of the limited finality of life as you grew up. Through all those years when you were a child growing up, you would have been aware that life is fickle, or at least,
In fact, I had trouble going to sleep for years because I was afraid of dying. because that's what happens when you fall asleep, right?
Did you understand what dying was?
It
Do
meant
you,
you never woke up again. You never did anything. You never ate. You never talked. You never did any other thing. You just were gone.
that's what you felt? Okay.
Yeah.
I still don't know what it is. I have no personal experience right now,
No,
so
but
I
you have the side effects of surviving someone who died, right? So that was the
yeah,
experience I had of surviving someone who died. Is it couldn't talk to them, couldn't eat with them, couldn't go places with them, couldn't interact with them in any way. So they're essentially not
oh,
themselves anymore. That was my
did
experience at 3.
did you do any goodbyes,
There was a funeral.
but not an afterwards goodbyes,
I don't
as
remember.
in connecting afterwards or in
Remember,
keeping
I was 3 years old.
in yeah, but they could have guided you with, I don't know, making drawing or something.
No, we were Asian. We weren't New Age spiritual.
My family neither, but I just feel that. So, and I'm completely different than my brother, so we have completely different views in one family on this. So I just feel it's in you. If you know, then you go and do something.
Like I said, the other part of it is I didn't know I had any conscious thought until I was 14. Up until then, I was just unconscious.
Great.
I don't know if you heard that part of the answer. I said the first conscious thing I actually remember thinking was that at the age of 14, I was looking inside my brain and said none of these thoughts came from me.
Wow. See, you were not really stimulated to be creative then,
None of them were original.
but you were not stimulated to be creative either.
Well, I was playing violin. I played the violin for 5 or 6 years by then. I was learning a lot of music. I was having straight A's in school, except for PE. I never got A's in PE.
What is that?
Physical education,
Ah.
using your body.
It's so funny. Maybe that was the reason. I don't know.
Anyway, that was my experience. I shared that I was unconscious till I was 14, and then you asked me, what was the first thing that was jarring or asynchronous? And that was when I came up with this incident about not being able to wake up my grandfather.
Yeah.
But I am curious to still see with others, what is the first conscious lesson you think you learned or thought that you learned, and at what age? Josh?
I was just going to say, I'm very fortunate that my dad was a writer growing up. So when I was 5 years old, I was sick of him coming to me with all his conscious thoughts and his new realizations. And I was like, hey, I got a book inside of me too. I can write shit. I got my own ideas on the world.
Good.
So I actually wrote them all down. It took me a year. So I had about 7 or 8 conscious thoughts that I wrote into a book at 5 years old.
Do you still have it?
So I would have to say 5 years old is when I started writing down the conscious thoughts. I don't trust my memory, and I would urge other people not to, because our brains are really interesting. We create memories and we tell stories. So I'm trying not to go back into my head and create a story of when I was 2 or 3.
I'm just saying, do you still have that book?
What's that? That book has sold over 80,000 copies already. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I sold it to the guys at MIT to try to stimulate their brains to create some good shit. So that's what I was told, to go take your book to MIT, and when the professors walk by, ask them if they want to read a book. And if they do, sell it to them. And the cost of the book is whatever you want to give. So it was pretty affordable. Good value.
Cool.
But I think to continue the conversation, the first real conscious, like, let me get into my brain thought that I remember was being afraid of ghosts or someone to kill me right before I went to bed. I had all those fears as a kid around 6 or 7. And I logically told myself, if a ghost is real, or if that evil guy that I saw on the nightmare movie that I watched the night before, if that killer clown is going to come and kill me in my sleep, then Wolverine is real, and the X-Men are real, and all the superheroes that I love are real. So I started praying to God every night that the crazy clown would come to kill me, because then I knew I get to meet Wolverine, who was my hero when I was a kid. So my first conscious thought is, if reality does allow for anomalies such as killer clowns, then reality has to allow for Captain America to come as well. So that was my first conscious, like, really thinking. And that changed my life, because if that, then this is how I started thinking at age 6. And that's why I'm in computers, because I love if that, then this, and I love logic. So that's the answer.
Awesome.
Some curious axioms to begin with. Okay, cool. Hey, Colin, you've been listening for a few minutes now. Do you have, let me fill in Dave with just about 20 seconds of background. Dave, there are 2 questions on the table, and 4, I think, of us have already gone and responded. The question is, what is the first conscious thing you remember learning that is not muscle memory, that is not, body function? First conscious thing that you remember learning, and how old were you? So I'm asking that, and Alex and I and Amanda and Josh have answered. Curious to see whether Colin and Glenn and you, Dave, have a response to that. So the floor is open. And there's a reason I ask, and this is actually not the first question I started with today. Dave.
I remember, I think it was kindergarten. We were learning how to draw an igloo in the class. And I was learning how to draw the bricks so they alternated. And I remember one of the other kids thought he figured out a way to do it faster, and he just made them like tic-tac-toe. And I said, I don't think that's right. And I remember him being so disappointed that he got it wrong. I'm only gonna be able to pop in for a few minutes today, but anyway, that's the first thing I remember consciously learning.
So kindergarten was what, 4 or 5?
It could have been first. I think it was kindergarten. I don't know how old I was. It was the first class I had.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thanks. So you came to that conclusion yourself. It wasn't that someone actually taught you. This was actually something.
Oh, no, we were being taught.
Okay. All right.
Is that what you're asking? What was the first thing
Yeah.
I learned? I taught myself.
First conscious thing you remember learning, whether it was self-taught or whether it was coming from someone else.
I think we were all doing it as a class exercise. And you said there was a reason you were asking. I'm curious about the reason.
You don't get to see that reason until you stick around.
Oh, okay. All right. I may not make it. We have someone coming to install a Ring doorbell in a little while, so I'm going to have to leave for that.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. I'm just being a little bit pokey.
That's okay.
I'll share it with you later. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Hey, Glenn, Colin, any thoughts on this?
Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I suddenly understood it was winter. It's winter time here. So when I popped in, I soon understood you've been going at it for an hour. So yeah. Well, that was a different, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
No.
Yeah, we started 71 minutes ago.
Really?
71. Yeah.
I thought it was just time because it says 17 CET.
Yeah, the areas, the time zones change seasons differently.
But whose winter time do we have? Because it says 17 CET, and that isn't.
Sorry, I was not the one that put 17C. I was the one that always puts 8 a.m. PT.
So we both have a time zone change then. So we are at our right time, but you still started an hour earlier because somehow you started it.
Yeah.
We changed tonight, I believe.
Okay.
I
should pull in at 4 o'clock. So then
we're retarded in America. We are retarded people.
No, it's lovely, but just the time scheme on the group doesn't sync at the moment. it's not correct at the moment. So we have to look at
Every time season, I think, well, we should really make announcements about this, but then I don't write it down and I forget. So,
Yeah, it's always like a period of a couple of weeks or a week or something. It's a little bit of confusion.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've never thought about that question before. That was really difficult.
Half
What
the
comes to
people,
mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind as your first thing that you learned? Don't think about it too much. What's the first thing you think?
Well, the only thing I can say is when I listened to your little exchange, the first thing that came into my mind was, and I mean, I spent a very large part of my childhood in a more or less a dream world. I love to just create this imaginary world. And what I remember was a moment when I began creating sort of like, it was like a world where I could create anything I wanted out of thin air, up in the sky or somewhere. And then at some point, I understood that wasn't very interesting somehow, or there was something missing in that. Like if I could just have everything exactly as I wanted it at a minute, somehow that was something was missing from that. I guess today I would say resistance or something, or a struggle, or you know. But anyway, that just popped into my mind. It also popped into my mind but I mean, then I was already like 16 or something, so it's hardly being a child. So but
what
I do.
lesson? I'm hearing the experience, but what was the actual lesson?
I
What was
guess
the
the
learning?
lesson was an interest in the real world and not just the world of imagination. I guess my focus began to shift. But I mean, I think I was a little bit of a troubled child. I mean, my parents got divorced. I was kind of a little hyperactive. So I sort of withdrew into imaginary world a great deal. But around about 16, 17, then I sort of got a renewed interest in the real world, so to say, and in people, and sort of contact with people. And because before that, it was a long time, I just thought everything was really stupid, culture, and yeah, sort of just wanted to be alone. Not all the time, of course, but yeah, that was I do remember that was there was a sort of a shift, but I mean, that's pretty late. I also remember one thing, when I was a child way back, I thought, I'm glad I'm young, because then it's a long time until I'm gonna die. That's really naive thought, but I remember that just came into my mind once. Yeah, I'm finished.
Glenn, how did you know that you were going to die? It's applicable for other people, but how do you know as a child and even now? What made it convincing for you? Because I'm still not convinced I am going. I still believe I may not go at all. Yeah, I see Sam looking at me. But
I'm
really,
probably
I don't
not
understand.
convinced. I'm probably not totally convinced yet. Yeah, it is some part of me who sort of feels that I've always been here and always will be here, but can't really explain it. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Thanks for the response.
But sorry, that was a bad answer. But it was just the first stuff that came
Wait,
to
wait,
my
wait,
mind.
wait.
So.
I'm curious.
love-
You say that's a bad answer, but maybe later. Colin, do you have any thoughts, or would you like to pass? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. I have three different ones from different stages. But you asked for the first. So I guess
Earliest.
the first was being at daycare and knowing I was alone and I didn't really know these people. And I remember some sense of enhancement. I remember the smell and taste of apple juice and those little beads, those colored beads in the sun, you know, the red, yellow, blue beads that they used to have strung on things and different things. I remember how bright they were and how the color was a bit soothing, but at the same time it was very lonely. And yeah, it was just a complete shift to find out that, hey, where am I and what's going on and why have I been betrayed? What, you know, why am I alone? Is, you know, where's my sister? And they gave me a picture, and I remember looking at the picture and crying myself to sleep a couple of times. I remember the song, My Name is Michael, I Got a Nickel, Shiny and New, or something. I remember that playing on the radio. So yeah, it was very vivid, this awakening. But yeah, the other ones are related, but yeah.
So how old were you, Colin?
Oh, I couldn't have been very old. 3, 4, 5, 3, 4.
And how would you state the learning? What was the lesson?
Awareness. I think I got a little bit more aware of the fact that the world's bigger. I'd even have dreams about being at places and kind of being outside, and there'd be like sun coming down the street. You know, I'd have this dream of aloneness, but not betrayed, but, you know, kind of feeling like I'm in the hood, you know what I mean? And everybody's here and I don't know, you know, sort of like taking part in the neighborhood. You can almost think of it like a parade is coming or something, but, you know, supper time is coming or something, but yeah, being alone. So I guess, sort of like Glenn too, I grew up in a household that was a single parent. And so I had a lot of time to think and discover later on too, which would be my second and third answer without going into it.
Okay. Anybody with any more reactions to this first round of questions before I ask my next question? Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, I just want to say happy birthday to Glenn before you go on to the next question. Happy birthday, Glenn.
Are you 29, Glenn?
Yeah, 29 and a little bit more. Yeah, yeah, 41. So very not much of a typical birthday celebration. I've actually been working today, and, yeah, on my way home, but it's good. Yeah.
I enjoy
every
birthday where I can look at the grass from this side of the earth.
Yeah,
that's a celebration to me.
it's a celebration, just being alive. That's for sure.
All right. So, are you guys willing to indulge my next question? Here's my next question. What's the last thing you learned consciously? And I'm not going to ask how old you are. What's the last thing you learned?
I can kick it off.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I learned that when the dog nuzzles up to my face in the morning and starts going burp, burp, that means that get the hell out of bed, man. That's the last thing I
learned. Time to feed me.
I was like, you got to go pee. You got to eat. She didn't want to eat. She didn't want to go pee. She was done sleeping. Like I learned that it's not always she wants something. She just doesn't want me to be sleeping anymore. So that's what I learned. That's the last thing I learned today.
That's good. Yeah, so that's the question. What's the last thing you learned?
Okay.
Yeah.
I learned that I'm not as smart as I like to think I am.
You just learned that?
Yep.
Just kidding.
I'm not as smart
Sorry,
as
Alex.
I like to think I am.
Actually, when did you learn that? Was it 9 o'clock this morning, 4 o'clock this morning? Or was it a long time ago?
No, that was probably a few months ago.
Oh, yeah. So it's been several months since you learned something then.
Wasn't long ago. It was a result of coming on the internet and meeting people at the GCC.
No, I'm kidding with you, Alex. I really appreciate the answer. Sorry about being an asshole, okay? But I'm just kidding you. So that's the question. What was the last thing you learned?
Just wanted to throw in there. I thought that was a little funny, sort of that had been learned recently, because I kind of feel like that's something that I learn often and then forget it and relearn it. Because there's always a part of me who thinks it's got everything figured out, and then, oh, I guess not. It's like every time it's equally surprising. It's a funny thing.
So what is the actual lesson, Glenn?
Yeah, well, the last thing I learned, I think I would like put this in a perspective of a couple of months or something, like it's a gradual thing, but I think it's a part of me that really loves discipline and order and accuracy and sort of, I don't know, almost like these traditional values, which I used to really have a lot of contempt towards when I was younger. And that's sort of like something that's dawned on me lately, that it's a part of me that really likes that and needs that and wants to incorporate that, sort of just these very simple things to, like having your house in order. But I mean, that happens by itself because my girlfriend is incredibly orderly, so I can't even get away from that. But like, yeah, like discipline, it's sort of like, I don't know if that's the right word, but something in that direction. I've learned that I value that more than I used to believe. I guess I can also say that I've learned that I have many sub-personalities inside of myself that I move between, which are quite different. Like, one is very romantic and loves to romanticize everything. One is really rebellious and wants to protest against everything. One is very conciliatory and wants to, always find the middle ground. One is very spiritual, loves the mysterious. One is very practical and loves the sort of, so that's also something that's really become clear to me lately, that I have these different modalities inside that I move between, sometimes many times during a day, and they're almost like different personalities, or I don't even know how to put it, but I think I'll throw that in as well. That's also kind of dawned on me a lot lately.
And for this question, I'm not going to ask how old you are. Any other people? I will actually go. Okay, I'll go next. And that is that when we were discussing the yin-yang symbol earlier today, Josh pointed out to me another derivation of the yin-yang symbol that I was not aware of. So I'm going to actually look into it. So I haven't actually learned it yet, but I learned that I need to look into it. So that is the lesson. That is the action that I'm taking from it. So that's from this morning. So I'm curious, does anyone else have something that is a contribution to the question, what is the last thing you learned?
Yeah, that's Josh gets a double hit, because last thing I learned was about gauge theory too. I'm reading about it right now, actually. I wasn't aware of it, although it fits very closely to what I do. It's a scientific thing. One of the earliest forms was Maxwell's formulation with electrodynamics. And I think the yin-yang fits in there. Everything in the cosmos has to cancel the equations. So when you have an equation, you have to have somehow it cancels out, and then they come up with more nuance where they have local gauge theory as opposed to global, I suppose, or universal. Anyway, that's a whole huge Wikipedia article. It's very interesting. Josh is right full of trivia this way. Knows a lot of different things. I would say one of the most important things I've learned along the theme of what Glenn's saying.
Not the most important. The last thing that you learned.
Well, I keep learning it over and over again.
Okay.
But I remember the first time I came across it was basically, it was after I had my attempt at understanding religion, and then went to university and learned about, again, the theme, I should say, is how different people are. And how, more to the fact, how much my assumptions, as in your first revelation, Sam, is there's more to it than what I think there is, or what I've been taught or cultured into. So now it's about trying to understand how one can deal with that fact that calling a spade is not as easy as calling it a spade. Some people say, what spade? Yeah, I guess it's the difference of how different we are, how we think differently, have different thrownness, I guess is a good way of saying it. Thrownness being where we are born and are raised. And two examples of it are very important. One is, if you raise a child from one culture within another culture, they will pick up the new culture, not the one that they came from. That's quite interesting. You can see it in people's, even in their diction. You can't tell what kind of an accent somebody's going to have by looking at what you think their nationality is. And so, another one is what we're talking about with what's actually possible to think, and what's our limits of thinking. And there's some examples, and which is what I'm trying to focus on now. Instead of the philosophy, I'm trying to wrap it in context and then give an example. Not saying this example proves everything, but this is an example of this, because it can be easily diluted with somebody else's certainty or somebody else's culture. So how to disagree well is between Sam and Doug. Maybe we can pull some stuff out of there from a couple of what I would consider very enlightened individuals. But I'm very interested to see how that would go in a little bit of a format where you're not the host telling people, but you're actually trying to fill out a syntax of some sort, an ontology, to get close to one. So in essence, I would say the boy with the incredible brain is the one I keep going back to, Daniel Tennant. His brain is able to calculate amazing things beyond what one would think is possible. I think that it's more magical and miraculous than any Bible story I've ever heard. Somebody be able to see pi to 25,000 digits, notice if some are missing. He has an amazing, as some other people do, it's called parasynthesis, I think, where I think that's the word, where your senses are mixed. You can see color. I mean, you can taste color. You can musical notes have a different color. A lot of times it has to do with color. Every number has a different shape to this guy. He can, there's a whole documentary where they tested him at a university and they pulled out the shapes later, and he still had the same value of a shape. 9s are very tall and scary. 7s are metallic. Just very weird things that I don't think the average person has any awareness of, which is about, a huge factor more than what my realization was of the fact that people are different. Not only are we different, but look how different that is. And it's not a miracle. It's not magical. It's just a natural thing. Not typical, but natural. So how can I judge? How can I know things that I think I know in the light of such examples? So
Colin, I'm trying to follow here. So what is the actual lesson? What is the actual learning?
How I could judge things and be certain. So again, it's a lot of things. It comes down to my fight against certainty, about how certain people are. And you're looking for consistency, I think was the theme you were going for. So yes, we are looking for consistency and being able to pick an example and follow it through. but there is no consistency. The larger you go, the consistency gets diluted. So I think you have to have multiple examples of consistency. Like if you want to fly an airplane, there's a consistent way to fly an airplane.
Oh, that went long again. So
yeah,
in a succinct form, what is the actual lesson? How would you express it to someone who's trying to learn this in a succinct way?
Don't be so certain. You know.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I won't ask how old you are. Hey,
79.
Would you like to share with you the last lesson or the last learning that you had? And I won't ask you how old you are.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking you.
Today I learned that I was 489.
Months?
Today I learned that I was 489. My psychic friend got that number from somewhere, and so we looked it up. So we got to angel numbers and numerology of that, and it's pretty fitting.
You know Gertrude in this group? Gertrude Vext?
Yeah. She's not here now, but
Yeah.
I know she's got wonderful crystals.
She got me my numbers when I visited her, and she can look at relationships, she can look at events, she can look at all kinds of aspects of your life by the numbers in your life.
Good.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. She has amazing gifts.
Okay, so if you guys are going to indulge me, I'm going to ask my very next question, okay? Which is, these reflections, clearly we can do more of this, but I was just trying to get a flavor of it, is that when it goes to the very first lessons to the very last lessons, the next question is, those lessons that we just reflected on, do you think those would be valuable for someone else?
Mm-hmm. I learned that everybody.
Okay, so how about this? Just to get a quick show of hands. The very first one, go back to the very first lesson that you shared with us, okay? Just with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, could you just share, do you think that lesson is useful for someone else? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Nobody with a thumbs down? I was dubious myself because I was wondering whether I should share with somebody that I was actually not conscious until I was 14. But I actually don't know about that. Okay, so the last lesson that you shared, either about the puppy or about, gauge theory or about 489 or whatever, do you think that lesson is useful to someone else? I'm trying to get to the punchline of this, okay? And that is, I think, and I would love to see, and I would love to co-create a means where rather than from encyclopedias, rather than from Google, rather than from, books, I would like to know whether there's a way that we can scale what we learn and how we help others learn. In other words, I'm trying to figure out, can I take what I learned at 14 and package it in such a way that it's useful to someone else, whether they're 14 or not, in a way that's consumable, in a way that makes sense? Or to package what I learned about gauge theory, and when would that be relevant to actually share with someone? Or to share, and by the way, this is also an embarrassing thing, but it's very personal and it's very non-published, so that's why you choose to use it. I didn't actually learn how to wipe a butt properly until I had a baby.
You didn't learn to what?
How to wipe a butt.
Oh,
How to wipe poop out of my
butt. Sorry, I had to, okay. That's normal.
So I'm saying, only after you try to clean a baby do you really think, oh, I have to think about this. That you have to go in both directions, that you have to see if something's still brown and all that, which I didn't ever think about when I was wiping my own butt.
Are we all using the same ruler to measure value?
I don't use a ruler to wipe my butt. What's the question?
Measure value. I mean, we've got if we've got to learn, if we've learned something, and some of us have learned more than others because we've got a different way of valuing the value, a different way of counting the value or weighing the value.
Yeah, I think I would say most of us would say the answer is yes. So I'm trying to just get at the question is I'm trying to figure out, and I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, what would be a mechanism for us to be able to share. And let me just clump a bunch of things into what's called life lessons. Okay, so life lessons are things like almost everybody would find useful. Okay, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's more esoteric, right? So pardon me, I don't want to pick on you, Josh, but I'm not sure yet that most people need gauge theory in their life. Okay,
What
so
theory?
I'm parking those. It's physics.
Which one? Gauge?
Gauge theory, yeah. It got brought up in the content of toruses, tori, and the yin yang symbol.
Ah, good. You have to tell me later, Joshua.
Josh can tell you, yeah.
It's
So-
very relevant for everyone.
So I'm trying to say, what are those things that are useful by either 2 or 3 sigma of people, you know, like maybe 95% plus, or even 80%? Take a smaller hurdle of,
but it's in nature.
Yeah.
People experience the same thing in another way.
Right.
The operational way, the applied circumstance.
mm-hmm.
So it's relevant, but maybe they don't know.
Well, I guess we can be functional in life without understanding that, right? Now, some of us may actually use gauge theory and say, geez, had I known that earlier, I would have lived my life differently. But I suspect fewer of us would say that. Okay. You know, whereas I could probably say, hey, you know, if I learned to wipe my butt better, I could probably have lived a better life, right? I could probably say that. Or I could say something like, you know, let's be a little bit crude. If I learned earlier how to put a condom on properly, I would probably have a better life. You know, maybe that's a better example, or a worse example. Amanda's shaking her head.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what you're saying.
I'm just saying,
Okay.
what are those things that we learned in life that ideally we could share with each other, so that I'm not waiting for some book, or I'm not waiting for a $495 weekend class, or I'm not waiting for some obscure video on YouTube where I have to pile through 19 other videos before I get to this good one. I'm trying to figure out, how can we share growing up and life lessons with each other? Now, I'm not asking us to come up with that system yet, but I'm saying those things that we use to prepare ourselves for collaboration. And I'm going to just quickly itemize a few of them. Whether or not we interrupt people, whether or not we pile on, whether or not we give finger symbols, whether or not we actually speak for 30 seconds or less, whether or not we actually use common terms, or whether or not we actually use terms that are very obscure, whether or not we use English, or whether or not we can actually, you know, write things down, whether or not we actually show up on time, whether or not we actually can speak and hold focus for 2 hours, you know, and there's a whole litany of these things. I'm saying there's part of internal preparation. You could call that education, you could call it life, you could call it growth, but there's internal preparation, who you are and how you present yourself to a collaboration, and what you've compiled into your person, what you've internalized, what you practice, that you then bring to a collaboration or to a conversation or to a dialogue or to a Zoom meeting. I'm trying to say, how do we share that with each other?
I was thinking of
question.
There's the value, the traditional cultural values of the group.
Sorry, there's some background that's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, sorry, I was. Can I just throw in a little something?
Well,
I don't think
And then there was some background noise.
there is some noise here, but I'll try to be brief. What I wanted to throw in was, this is like this really big question, and one of the issues that I've noticed is that if I try to learn somebody else something, then there's very often this response of either agreeing or disagreeing. If they agree, they immediately think they get it based on their own understanding. If they disagree, they're beginning all kinds of questions, and somehow something is muddled up. And it's this, I'm sure you're all aware of it. It's like when you give
Got it, Glenn. You're done. I understand.
unsolicited advice. You love giving.
Sorry, I was rudely mocking. I was rudely.
One thing that came to
your
me.
example.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said. The audio was broken, but yeah, maybe were you saying that I was kind of doing that now or something?
No. I was being rude in modeling exactly what you were saying. I was agreeing with you immediately and say, got it, Glenn. I already got it. Sorry, it was a bad attempt at humor.
Looks like Glenn's froze. I'll jump in Josh's.
Oh yeah, and what they already
he's
get,
there.
right? And
I don't.
but it's like
Chaos. Here we go.
Yeah. So Glenn, why don't you finish?
yeah. So what I want to say, I remember one example when I saw my brother come and visit us, and my stepfather was at home, and he was very sort of anxious kind of guy. If someone showed up at the door unexpectedly, he would usually get very uncomfortable. And then I really saw my brother just really, he's such a smooth guy and incredible social skills. And just the way he spoke to him, and it's like in just a few minutes, they were like talking like old friends almost. And I just remember there was something about that really made an impression. So when you asked the question, the first thought that came to my mind was something artful. It has to be something that has an elegance or something artistic almost come in. But it's a difficult question, right? Because if I know, or am I then ruining the other person's chance to discover it for themselves?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I'm
Because
finished.
you're breaking up, Glenn. You're not clear. What was the question?
Yeah, if I see something, let's say I see something about you that I think is important for you to understand. Let's say that. Should I even say it? Probably not, because I would ruin your possibility of discovering it for yourself. It's this fundamental dilemma. So it's not an answer, but it's certainly something relevant to the question that Sam raised. That, maybe real learning is something you have to discover yourself. So maybe it's more about creating the conditions where that happens. If that came through, that was what I wanted to share. Did that come through, by the way?
Your connection is really choppy. I think I probably got about 60 or 70% of that. But Amanda, you want to respond?
I think we are not separated. So it means we're not separate from each other, which means the idea that somebody has to do it by themselves or that you have to tell, it implies that you are not a unity and that you cannot pick it up unsaid. And so it's a sort of an artificial separation of people. People learn without saying, and people pick up, without. So there's a lot of things happening. And so I just see that as part of a consciousness awareness growth or something like that. So the idea that we are separate, or you can shield yourself, or you have to exchange stuff that are not coherent and that are not resonant and that are not connected in themselves, is part of our current consciousness system where we're in, I would say. And for me, it would be really important to be able to say that there's maturation differences sometimes. And that, for example, if I collaborate, that I don't want to go in a chop, 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 chop kind of time frame, because that implies purely operational, implementation kind of action, where you don't zoom out and you don't think, and where you are not aware of your senses, and that you just, totally make your agenda full and numb your senses. and I'm just like, what are you doing? You're not thinking anymore. If you're not thinking, then we cannot do anything sensible. Let's get to the sensible part first, So for me, this is kind of a weird system. But I notice many people are in it because their office forces them to think like that. So it's kind of interesting. I'm looking for ways to distinguish that. I have been working on that for a long time also. But I would say there's different maturations and different dimensions of doing and sensing things in the same time. Some have one frame at one moment, and some have like 15 frames in the same moment. And so it matters what our contribution is. If you handle 15 frames or one, there's an intensity difference.
Mm-hmm. In fact, it's interesting that you brought that up, Amanda, because the very first question I asked in this session was, when you meet someone less enlightened than you, how do you feel? How do you treat that person? And how do you know that they're less enlightened than you? So that if you treat that as one question, then the second question was, when you meet someone more enlightened than you, how do you feel? How do you know? And how do you treat that person? And that's what drove me to ask these questions today. So I'm backing up now to say, does it make sense for me to pitch this in a frame that says, I'm very curious how I present myself to a collaboration. Mm-hmm. I'm very curious how I prepare myself, how I educate myself. And that's the context for these questions. Josh, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to wrap it up because I know Amanda's perfect on time because she's been that way since she was a kid. So I was going to do my closing because we're getting close to the end. But I was about to say something, and then through the brokenness of Glenn talking, he said exactly what I was about to say. I literally was about to say exactly what he said about how we converse with each other. Do we point out what each other is? Like, he literally said exactly what I was going to say. And I think starting off with the premise and what you were saying, Amanda, just now, this is the way I heard it. I don't know if I heard it correctly. But stopping the concept, we were taught that Sam is separate than me. But from studying Buddhism, I was retaught that Sam is me, and you are me, Amanda, and Alex is me, and Colin is me, and Glenn is me. So I spent about 4 years meditating very deeply, 2 to 3 hours a day on that understanding, and then taking all the thoughts in my head and pushing them out because they were coming in from places that weren't me, and only allowing the thoughts to come in that were me, but not knowing who I am because I am one with everybody. So I had to only have a thought when I'm talking with someone else. So to wrap it all up from start to finish, Sam, if someone is more or less enlightened than you, that's the premise that they are not you. And my premise is that they are me. So I'm always enlightened as long as I'm always talking to bits and pieces of me, which is all the other souls on this planet, and not just the humans. I talk to trees too. They're really enlightened. Some of these trees around here are over a couple 100 years old, these oak trees. And they tell me things that I didn't even know. Like, I'm like, what? You guys are pretty freaking smart, you trees. So I really feel that gauging reality, like Colin was talking about, the boy with the beautiful mind, there are other ways of realizing our consciousness where it's not separate. And all the smartest, David Bohm, Carl Sagan, you can go on and on, these beautiful, eloquent scientists, they know for a fact, because they're scientists, that we are not separate. They can prove it scientifically. And I'm just waiting for everyone to wake up to the reality that we are all one. It's a fact. But
All
until then,
energy.
let's just keep talking about who's more enlightened than someone else. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you for a great conversation today, Sam. I appreciate it. And happy birthday, Glenn.
Alex, you wanted to say something before I respond?
Yeah, well, it's getting on towards the hour, so I'll use this as a checkout. We come to the meeting with the spirit of cooperation and learning. If I happen to share an experience that somebody else appreciates, that's a bonus. But I'm not here to enlighten anyone. I'm here to learn, because we are all always learning. So that gives me more meaning for being here, meaning in my life and meaning in the group, meaning that means something, and that's good. Oh well.
Anybody else with a response before I have my checkout? Amanda.
Yeah, I could check out. I just wanted to first mention that.
Sorry.
At her hand.
Colin.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. I wouldn't say less or more, but it's more like I ask persons to let the other frames be also. So as long as the other frames are not distorted, I'm fine. But mostly I find that frames of understanding and awareness are being distorted by those who don't see them. And so I may ask for space for it, which is very unusual. And I started to do this when, I don't know, I think my hearing got more sensitive. So I had to. People are just screaming, you know, they don't know. And at some point I also withhold, which is maybe a form of compassion, or even may send somebody away without him knowing it. Was just ask, please could you work somewhere else? But and I don't say my third eye is shutting down when you're here. It's true with some people. So I'm not completely used to it, but these are situations that I find myself sometimes in. And I think we need to handle them just as pragmatic as going to get a bread at a bakery. Actually, you should just be able to mention these things without holding back all the time, because it's not used, you know, for people to say these things. Maybe we need a language just to go and talk about it, because some more people are awakening. So it's not like nobody has that. But we live in a time frame where we are used to like factory work. So and that's no longer needed, because other things are also required and welcome, because it helps. So that's what I think. And thank you. Do I need to check out? Or was that my checkout? I don't know.
Make it if you like. I'm willing to be flexible on the time. Some people are more stipulating on the time than others.
Shall I go now? Not interrupting anybody? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Amanda. Yeah, I'd like to first say the first thing I remember, it's difficult in this kind of a space because there is a lot of free thought going on and free association. But I think we are doing very well at focusing in this conversation. Besides that, Josh was mentioning that at the beginning, we were in a philosophical conversation. So he didn't really know where to add. And you mentioned that Josh's point was kind of philosophical and you don't know if it was a takeaway for somebody's life lesson, right? So I don't think he intended that to be a life lesson. And I think you both agree that having some gauge theory in your life and understanding how Einstein and some of the people derive these things within systems, it's fascinating, but it is in a context, a very specific context. So are we ready to have that conversation? So I think you're mentioning, Sam, when you come to a conversation, you know, what do you bring into it? How ready are you for that conversation? I think you use different words for that. How we present ourselves, I think was closer to what you had said. So yeah, I think in order to have a fair conversation, you have to kind of know what kind of standing you have and what kind of personalities are in the room. Different personalities change the conversation. And I think using tools and models is what I would like to see. In fact, as I move forward, I'm going to be looking at having ways of putting up guardrails for conversations. And if you go outside that guardrail, it's not a mistake. It's not that it's not interesting. It just has to be parked for another conversation, because it's going to dilute what we're trying to get to. And if I'm wrong, then maybe, you know, at least we can distinguish that. So we have some way of measuring, gauging where we're going, and where we can go back and add more to it, add more nuance. I find that probably a lot of my conversation is, I shoot myself in the foot by jumping into nuance all the time, and I should just stay very focused, you know, going off on rabbit trails. So having a fair conversation is a matter of having, how ready you are to have that conversation, and what are going to be the personalities, and how you accommodate those personalities. And I'm saying possibly through models. And interesting that the model that I have just recently, you could say one of the last things I've learned is that the yin yang could be in a situation where you have the white side for scientific thought context. It's cold. It doesn't care what you think science. Gravity is, red is. If you want to disagree that red is not red, or try to say red is blue, you're going to have a hard time. Where on the other side of the yin yang, you have the dark, it's more of a cultural, personal thing. So when somebody says, I don't think science actually, which I've heard in this group, science doesn't really give us a lot, or I don't like to think on scientific terms, or whatever, then on the yin yang, the person likes to live within the darker side, as opposed to going to the white side. Or you can switch the colors any way you want. And I know it's not a black and white situation, but the yin yang makes you think that way. So if somebody says, I don't want to bring science into this conversation, then you can hold up the yin and say, okay, so all this white stuff is off limits now. You're going to deny me this part of the conversation. Let's just stay in the emotional side of the conversation. I get the same thing when people say, there's a reason for everything, or they bring in spiritual, what I call woo. Woo is something I don't really have an easy time to relate to, although I do have an easy time to relate to human emotions. So I can relate with emotions and empathy, but to think that you know from whatever source of material, which is extremely speculative, that you're going to have authority. Now, to what Amanda was saying, as long as people keep it to themselves, that's fine. But as soon as they use authority and say, you know, gays should be locked up and put in jail, you know, where do they come up with that rule in Kenya or wherever? And why do we not do that in North America anymore? Like, how did we get there in that level of agreement? So I see Amanda has some problems with me splitting the black and the white.
Follow you, but it's yeah.
Well, I'm saying with that tool of black and white, you can at least say, I'm over here speaking right now, and you're over here, I think. Would you agree with me that, for example, in the conversation,
you can't capture yet, but that's okay. That's really
go ahead, Amanda. What's your?
I really think you're trying to capture what you cannot capture yet. So you try to have an overview of consciousness while you're in a certain layer, and then you try to put everything in one measurement tool. Well, there's an invitation for you to grow, and some people know things by sensing. They have actually senses that register, you know.
Yes.
So,
well, in any event, I can say, yes, I'm over here in the scientific side most of the time, trying to find out meaning and value, repeatable things that can predict and have some, you know, some life lesson, you know, to it. You know, if you know that certain constraints, then you can make some certain assumptions, and you hope your assumptions are right when you're crossing the street, right? That the traffic has stopped because that light says the traffic has stopped. You still have to look because there's that guy who's not paying attention to the light, right? Or that person. So I guess the last thing I wanted to mention, having the models, trying to set up a fair context to have the conversation, so at least you can see where you're coming from. So, because even though people might have other ways of understanding, I think it's so easy to misunderstand and to disagree. That's why having agreements and a way to find calm ways to discuss it and have that nuance in the conversation, I think is important, instead of somebody saying, oh, science is not useful here, or this is not useful here, or, you know, just believe in the Lord, or just, you know, there's a reason for everything. I think those are in the white lie territory, where it's easy to tell somebody there's a reason for everything to make them feel better. But if you go over into science, there's not a human reason for everything, which is what was meant. There is a physical reason for everything, but what you're talking about isn't anything at all, because I can't see it, feel it, taste it, I don't sense it. So is that thing you're talking about even real? Right? So
is science even real?
I'm saying that we have to, and we should be able to distinguish things, however we do it, and learn from our mistakes.
So why are you closing your senses?
Why
are you closing your senses then? Why are
I
you
didn't say I was closing my senses. I was saying,
I see you going into rationalization of what your body is trying to tell you, and your mind is saying, no, that cannot be true. I have to be able to understand it, so I cannot trust what I may sense. So it's actually stopping you.
No, I'm saying science has done a very good job at putting up guardrails to say, look, take the woo away. It doesn't work here. It just doesn't.
What if science
separation?
is woo?
Hold on. I'm just checking out. And separation of church and state is another example of saying, look, we have two sides to respect here. And I think the point of the matter is, the life lesson that Sam's looking for is when it has to do with authority, and it crosses over and tells you what you should do, what your life lesson should be. We should have ways to model this, to say, are you telling me something that you just feel in your heart, that you're sensing, or is this something that you can actually give me some evidence for? Like, you know, cars are dangerous because if they hit you, they hurt you. Yes, they do. Where if you meet a bully, there might be different ways to deal with a bully if you're educated enough to know that they're not going to agree with you, no matter if you say red, white, or blue. They don't care. It's about, so there's two sides to a discussion.
But Colin, why do you separate evidence from senses? Isn't evidence based on senses? Isn't senses
it's not separate. It's a delineation of a different context, is what it is. But instead of just smoothing everything over, because and it's with science you can get specific and say, I'm talking about air travel and wind speeds.
Isn't science based on senses? Isn't everything in science based on sensation, empirical observation?
Yeah, but not willy-nilly. But not willy-nilly. It's not willy-nilly. That's what I'm saying.
Sense impressions, right? Sense impressions.
I'm saying given a fair context to be able to understand. Like for example, when they brought in the metric system, the United States still hasn't taken on a lot of the metric system, but that was an attempt to build a new model to make it easier to do math and measurements.
But it's just that Amanda mentioned rationalizations, and that is very easily going into the speculative woo, while science, as I understand it, is based on sensation, on actual physical sensation of events with the body. While this rationalization activity, which you seem to be engaged in, I agree, is more in the direction of woo.
I'm in the direction of understanding when something comes up and it's a duck. It looks like a duck. It talks like a duck. Is it a duck? I don't know. How do you know it's a duck or not? And I'm saying science has a side that if you lie about it, it's not respected. If you speculate on the color red, it's not a good idea.
Well, I question whether science even exists. I know the word exists, but I've never seen it. I've never held science in my hand. I've never seen a photograph of science. I've never visited science. So why should I even believe it exists?
I do believe a scientific method exists. I don't think science is a thing as in something you touch. It's a process.
I said that to my professor of philosophy of science. He didn't think that the scientific method was even in the curriculum. he said, that's outside the curriculum. I studied philosophy of science. He said, nobody knows what the scientific method is. It's just what the scientists do.
I think what I'm talking about is a common understanding, not what's right and wrong. That's what's to be determined. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying, how do we know we're talking about the same thing? Is it 10 millimeters away? What is it? Is it red? Or, you know, and when you get too speculative, it's no longer a fair conversation.
I know. Well, that's
so
why
I'm saying it's there is the side of science that's repeatable. Like every time you do that, it happens.
Yeah, regularities. Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, and it used to be science was just a small idea and a seed in a sea of speculation. Now science has become quite a huge thing, if you haven't noticed, where a lot of speculation is getting smaller.
It's a lot of speculation that goes under the name of science. This is a big discussion later. It's interesting, of course.
Yeah, well, I'm saying the models that help distinguish that. So you would agree with me that this is a decent model to carry forward with, and you would like to stay outside of the yellow. You would like to stay outside of the white side of the conversation because you think the white side doesn't really exist. Then we have something to talk about.
Hey guys,
can I jump in?
There's been a lot of ping-ponging. I was like wanting to see if other people had a chance. Alex has had his finger up for quite a while.
Yeah.
I don't know if my point was made. I don't know.
Here's what you were going on about. Science can be helpful because it's the art of measuring things and labeling things, and it teaches us how they are related with each other and how they interact with each other. But you know, what percentage of the world's population believes in a afterlife?
Yeah, I think that's a good example of the two sides of the thing. And you know, I'm using a number system, but there's also a larger example in genome theory. They really made large progress on ontologies and how to make ontologies, and that's, you know, that's going to drive the next version of the web through being able to understand what things are. And that's what I'm talking about, understanding what things are so we can talk about them, not if I'm right.
I have two responses. One is science seems to be a method that is protecting us against something that takes authority over us because we may trust something that is not true, which implies that we do not trust our own senses to register the truth ourselves and to be able to experience that. We have something outside of ourselves telling that. No. And so I discover a lot of fear in your assumptions.
No, what I'm saying is...
The second one is ontology.
That's not true.
And the second one is ontologies in the computer realm are not, they're mere taxonomies. They're not ontologies as in the philosophical realm. And they actually say nothing about who we are. And this is quite interesting. I took a deep dive on that one. And really, Glenn, I love what you said. Just so these are the things.
Yeah, the question isn't who we are. The question isn't anything other than how we understand. That's the question. How do we understand? And I'm saying if we don't have a common language, if you want to speak French and I'm going to speak German, there's no understanding going on.
Well, yeah.
We could be sensing the exact same thing. That's my point.
This is really interesting, all this. Of course, it's a big discussion. I just wanted to briefly check out, but I mean, the point that I just wanted to at least briefly touch upon is that it seems to me that everything you call science is based on sense impressions from the real world, personal experiences, which are subjectively interpreted. So therefore you could say that science is the intersubjective activity of many people comparing their experiences, and then the models that become popular are considered to be science. But this is mixed up with woo all the way, Colin, and you should, come on, don't be naive. There's so much stuff in the universities, it's pure woo, and it's taught by professors, and it's considered respected science. Think about psychiatry, for example. There's so much total woo that goes into that field, and it has to do with groups, it has to do with financing. So it's a lot more messy. But if you go down to the basics, the sort of scientific method, asking reasonable questions, questioning your assumptions, looking at sense impressions, then you're almost coming down to common sense and basic rationality, which pretty much everyone agrees on. And that's what I think is the common ground. But those dichotomies can very quickly lead us into a lot of confusion. So we have to be a little careful with all of that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I think your point about anthropomorphic is good.
Are we in a round of checkouts, or is the conversation continuing? Because if
I don't know, I feel like it's continuing on my point, because I make a point and everybody's tearing me down. I don't think I'm being understood.
But then don't make a point when you're checking out.
Why not? I think that's a perfect time to make a point.
No, because you're not making a point about yourself. Checking out is saying your state of feeling, how you have experienced it, and saying goodbye. And it's not the time to engage in a new discussion of this depth and this broadness.
Colin was talking about what he believes.
And I was talking about the context of this meeting. I've been talking about the same thing the whole meeting long. The whole thing. And the thing is, it's about understanding. And with Glenn's example of psychology and stuff, yeah, that's in the pseudoscience realm of science, where we really, it's experimental. It's what you call wicked problems, how the brain works. So they have a DSM that they try to write. That's their scientific manual of these are the diseases. Well, guess what? Homosexuality is no longer in there. So they made a mistake.
A lot of opinions in your checkout, and I'm really getting a bit tired of it. I mean, you say it's not, you say it's your belief, but there's a lot of things that want people, that ask for people to engage in it. It's not letting people free to say, thank you for checking out. And you know that. If you are aware, then you know that.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's just that
I don't know where you're coming from, Amanda. Sorry.
Well, it's very simple. It's just that the way you raise the question is kind of like it invites a deeper discussion. So that's super interesting. It's just that it's maybe it's a little late in this conversation, but I love it. So I think it's super interesting. So, but anyway, can I just do a real checkout? And I'm sorry that I sort of latched onto this, but.
Yeah, I think it's you then, Alex.
I actually drove my bus 2 bus stops. I just wanted to briefly respond to Sam's question about whether a person is more enlightened than you. It's not so easy to know, because when I was younger, I used to have a lot of contempt towards the people who were very, narrow-minded, who sort of only saw it one way. And I think that's very much what Colin also talked a little about. And sort of certainty. How can you be so certain, right? And I always thought that they were just idiots. And it's really, but lately I've come to realize that this is actually a way that it produces power and ability to have a focus and direction. So it can become like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And now it's all a lot less clear to me, also because people have different roles in society, for example, and some have to be the doers, and maybe they kind of have to adopt certain beliefs. And maybe all beliefs are, in a sense, woo, but they can be, practically useful. So that kind of makes it more complicated. But I don't want to get into all that, but I do remember there's this woman, Annette, she's a very old woman, connected to some of the spiritual work that I'm involved in. And there's just something about her that when she comes into the room, there have been these moments when her presence has somehow ignited a flame or something inside. And it's just small things, like just coming into a room and she's just looking at us or at me. And it's like her look just says, whoa, this moment actually means something. And then it's like, whoa, I remember that. That's right. This moment actually means something. It's not just whatever, it's actually important what happens. It's not much of an answer, but there has been these meetings with people where they just, it's almost like they express something that speaks to the more aware part of myself or something, and then that is then awakened. But it's trying to rationally understand this question of who's at a higher level or lower, that's all become really, really unclear. But yeah, anyway, very, very delightful conversation today. So thanks to everyone. And I would love to continue going into this really interesting thread you brought up, Colin. It's just, but here we go. So thanks, everyone.
Okay. Hey, Colin, did you have a chance to complete?
Well, I know that I need to speak better. I need to find a way to say what I'm trying to say in a more concise way. What I'm saying is I'm thinking that choosing models and a specific example of topic discussion is important, because while we're too general, anybody can bring in any kind of a rational or what seems to be a good point to make. As I'm sure Amanda's points are valid, and it would be nice to put them alongside my points where they're not conflicting and we're not necessarily in disagreement, but we're actually trying to express some kind of understanding. I did mention that science is just one piece of it, and it's not the spiritual side of things. So, and it's inherently excavating all of this emotion. It's excavating all of the human anthropomorphization. It's just saying, what do we notice and what can we reproduce? I'm not discounting the other side. I just want to know when the conversation is completely within the science side of things and when it's not in the science side of things. Not that both conversations aren't valuable. So, and having the yin-yang tool, I see that that's a way, or you could have a coin, two sides of a coin. Then you can start to get into dichotomies and trichotomies, and there's it's very interesting. I do think there's something to be said about having three or more for certain things to be understood. There's spectrums to be considered when people just want to make things simple, black and white, and there's actually a spectrum. So in order to understand, I think it's what I'm trying to get to. It's important to get out of the generalities into the specifics of the topic and then try to bring the nuance around that. Because if you're just going to speak in generalities, which is a lot of what we're doing here philosophically, we're just getting closer to the point where we want to start a real discussion on something. And the something that I'm discussing here generally is, how do we agree better? How do we coexist? And how do we fend ourselves in a life lessons against people who are so certain that they're right that it's obvious they're not? Like, I don't want to insult anybody, but I do think we're in a period of time where I would be very against the religious right deciding what should be in the textbooks in the United States.
Colin, you want to wrap up?
Going everywhere.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, it is about understanding, and it is about bringing in models and tools and being specific examples.
What
and
is
one
the
is, how do we agree?
Group of this work?
Well, it's a couple of months now it's been going on with the idea of how do we agree better, agreements with the barn raising. It's also with understanding. So I'm going with the theme of barn raising somewhat, trying to add what I see and come clearer in what I'm trying to work towards. And it is towards understanding in a way to have fair discussions, common sense or otherwise. I think common sense is a red herring. I think too much emotion may be a red herring, but no emotion at all may be missing the mark. Is it an anthropomorphic discussion? So it depends what you're talking about.
I think
What
that's
we're talking about is
actually really
agreeing.
dense.
Yeah, what
Really.
we're talking about is agreeing. How do we agree? And if we can't even find the right measurements and language and tools, then we're just going to go around in circles.
Who said we disagree in the first place? And then who says we need any model at all to understand each other? And then
well, I'll let Sam answer that one.
It's so dense. This is so dense as a method. I just don't know why we go this direction.
I'll be very clear. But
Good.
Alex, did you want a chance to check out first?
Just the disagreement is the foundation for agreement.
Why?
You can't have a disagreement. You can't have an agreement unless you've had a disagreement.
Well, I don't need both, I think.
Well, when you make an agreement, it's because you both agreed on something. Before you agreed, you had a disagreement.
That sounds really awkward.
Well, we could skip both.
That is an option.
I think that is the discussion. That's the discussion right there.
If you already agree, you can't have an agreement.
Good, and I think me and Josh go in non-duality.
There's a spectrum.
I'm on that too. I'm on that too.
3 against 3, good.
Is there ever a good time to tell a white lie? There you go.
This is clear.
My fly is down when I have spinach between my teeth. All right, here. I think that some of us are ignoring the dot in the yin-yang. Okay, the yin-yang symbol has 2 large areas of black and white, but there's also dots in it. So when we say we are all one, I agree. We are all connected. We're all part of the same universe. But when we also understand that what I control is my time and attention, I don't control your time and attention. I don't control any of your times and attention. So there's some entity whose time and attention is distinct from others. And that's the I. Okay, with or without the ego, that is the I. So I control where I put my time and energies and attention. So there is a sense of self that is useful because I then choose what to do with this body. I don't choose what to do with any of your bodies. And that's still a very useful distinction. That does not negate the fact that we are connected. So when I have a sense of self, I have agency over this protoplasm that I manage to control. I have control over whatever's between these ears that I get to formulate thoughts with. So there is a sense of self that is useful, and it is not useful to deny that, in my opinion. So that's the dot in the yin-yang symbol. There's still a distinction, there's still a boundary. And that's why I still say, even though we are connected, we have different understandings of what's happening. We have different interpretations. We use our senses differently. You know, the antenna that are in my cellular structure are picking up different signals than the antenna that are in your cellular structure. On a base level, they're very similar, but in an instant, they have some distinctions, okay? And those we attach meanings to. And those meanings give rise to these interpretations that we then use to guide our actions. And if we see those differently, there will be different action, there will be different thought. We can talk about those as misalignment. It is also common to talk about those as disagreement. It is not triggering for me, as it is for some people, to use the word disagreement. For me, an agreement, we're coming to some kind of common understanding or some common behavior pattern, is enabling and is empowering, because then we amplify our efforts, and at the very least, we don't counter each other. I don't negate you, you don't negate me. We can possibly try and amplify each other and cohere and resonate. And I think that's the distinction that to me is a useful distinction of self. So when I say I want to bring myself to a conversation or myself to a collaboration or myself to a team, that presentation encompasses all of my preparation, all of my past experiences, all of what I think I understand, all of the behaviors under which I'm going to guide my collaboration. And those, I think, are useful to understand, because if you do the same, then I know where we could potentially have a flare up, and I could be aware of it, and then I could say, okay, fine. We were very explicit about that. I'm not going to get triggered when somebody interrupts me, because that person said that's one of the ways they interact. And I'm completely fine with that. That's your agency to say that you will actually interrupt. And what you mean by that is you're amplifying the point that I'm making, or you're agreeing, or whatever, okay? That's one interpretation. But if someone says, okay, I agree that interrupting someone is not a good thing, and then that person interrupts me, then I can see, well, that person's not actually behaving the way that person said they would behave. That's an observation. That's not necessarily an action opportunity, but that's just an observation to begin with, okay? So I think that is why, for me, understanding self, understanding others, and then potentially creating agreement is fundamental to anything that we're going to do, even separately or independently, but especially if we do it together. And if we don't recognize that, then I have still much, much to learn, but I also have much to offer if this makes sense. Over. Yes, Amanda.
I have two things, and then I see Josh also. That one is, life is what happens when you're planning other things. So agreements actually prevent you to grow at some point.
I strongly disagree with that.
And no, I'd rather have a covenant in which we promise to be attending each other, and try to be respectful for each other's growth, than a hard emphasis on this is what we agreed and blah, 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 and then, solidifying life as we know it already and not learning anything.
I have a curious question. Why are agreements so triggering? Why are they so much?
Because there has been a lot of negative, dense information that just went on for 20 minutes that I really triggered about. And that's not the agreements only, but it's the idea that you can grab life and actually contain it, and that you can crush it.
That is totally within yourself, Amanda. Whoever said that?
No.
Who here said that?
No, because this is what happens.
I think she's got a point.
Okay, did you say that, Glenn?
Yeah. Well, it's something about the activity of trying to capture something continuously. It has this self-perpetuating quality to it. But it has its place sometimes. Totally, but yeah. But sometimes we need a break from it, right? Sorry for breaking in, but I think it's important.
You did, because I see that Amanda was quite frustrated, but there's these words capture, there's these words restrict.
It is capture. Colin is capturing. I've been watching this for months now, and it's for me clear.
Why is that a capture?
That anything that is outside, anything that makes him fearful.
Why is it true? Why is it true for you?
Because I can see it.
Why is it true? What effect does it have on your life?
Well, I'm frustrated because lots of frames of understanding are being excluded by it.
That's Colin's way of understanding.
Yeah, but he's imposing it by talking for 20 minutes like it's the only reality.
You have it imposed on you. Why?
It is imposed because he's taking the liberty to take it, and lay it over all of us. And we are allowing it. I'm not allowing it. I'm just saying, no, not for me. That's it.
Yeah, I don't feel restricted by Colin.
I do, because it's been too long. And I think there is a difference in wisdom here, in understanding different frames of understanding.
Or you're
the fact that you're interpreting collaboration, Sam, as a agreements thing is a very two-dimensional pattern, actually. It's very flat.
But it's those levels.
Wait. I have to respond
together.
Amanda,
yeah.
Did you or did you not agree to come to the Zoom meeting at this particular time?
Yeah, but it was a very deep one, and it didn't carry this topic when I entered.
Yeah, but you entered for something, and you do it.
Because I was wondering what the topic was, but I don't have to agree with having a third-dimensional person imposing his frame on me for over 20 minutes while we're with more persons here. And at least 3 of them have another view on it. That's half-half.
I think that just goes to the point that if you try to discuss something specific without a model, people get lost and feel their own interpretation.
Okay,
Stop repeating yourself, please.
Josh has had his hand up for quite a while.
let's just reel it back to a real conversation because we're having a great conversation. So, and it to me, it went to binary: agreement, disagreement. You can't agree unless you disagree. If you disagree, then there's an agreement about disagreeing about the agreement. It's binary, and life is not binary. I think we all know for a fact that there is no such conversation. It's an art, the art of conversation. So what I was putting my hand up is to say is culture is something we say, but we don't really understand what it is, how it's created, and how does it last for thousands of years. Why do Asian people, we all know that a certain part of Asia, they take their shoes off when they go inside a house. Well, some people in China don't do that, and some people in India don't do that, but everyone in Thailand and in Japan, they do that. So culture is not what you do, it's what you don't do. And that's where it gets tricky. Culture conversations aren't what you agree on or what you don't agree on. Culture is, over time, we all know that we don't do certain things. And by baselining what we don't do, that allows for things to grow and evolve. So like the Jewish culture, if you get deep into Judaism as a religion or as an ancient culture, it is a constantly evolving culture that most people that aren't Jews don't understand, that they're constantly questioning their culture so they can evolve. So it's very tricky to say we don't do this unless we have 1,000 years of conversation about this and we change the culture. And that's all I'm saying is we can argue forever about what we do and what we don't do, but until it becomes something that is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's unconscionable. It just is, because it's a habit that's happened so long, then it becomes culture.
And the word you're looking for, incontrovertible. It becomes
that's a good word. I don't know if that's the one I was looking for, but that's a good word.
It means there's no room for doubt.
Well, it means that the minute someone walks into a house with their shoes on, every single person in their socks or in their slippers looks at that person and just stops what they're doing and just looks at them. Then that becomes culture, meaning we know we don't take our shoes off. So if someone is, we know we don't talk over each other and start arguing with each other. That's the culture we've created here at the GCC.
So you're saying that culture is kind of what we do, the behaviors.
What we don't.
And what we don't do.
Yeah. Don't talk over each other.
Same thing.
And as I talked over you, as I just broke culture, and now I'm going to shut up, Glenn. Thank you.
I'm just saying what we do and what we don't do, those are all agreements, whether you frame it as a is or is a not. You know, it's the same thing. So it's a distinction that to me doesn't have power.
Well, change the word. What's another word for agreement? Is just a norm? What's another word for
accept?
Pattern.
Contract.
Understanding.
Behavior.
Agreement is a contractual term. It's a transactional term.
You know, some people choose to get triggered. Any word will trigger anyone, you know, in particular. So it's a word that's in wide use. And some people choose to use it in a triggering fashion. And it's useful to understand that, but you know, for me, I don't understand why it's so triggering.
It's so painful. It's so painful. It's so painful because this question even is a consciousness in action. You know, it says we have to fight each other over words. Then we have to have
now I feel quite triggered.
Points. Then we have to disagree and put everything in boxes. It's world two. It's me and the other next to each other, nothing.
At least, if it takes over the whole show, that can happen. But I mean, I think Sam, you made a good point that there's a place for both, and there are times when we need to make agreements. But I have to say that there is a real danger that this mechanism of putting stuff in boxes goes mad and takes over your whole life, and you're going to go for every moment to the rest of your grave without a moment of real perception.
And that's a real danger. Just keep that in mind when you answer,
That
Sam.
with every cell of my body. Okay, that is a totally restrictive, old world notion of what agreement is, and I'll just.
I know. I'm just
I actually want to
responding to
acknowledge
what.
that Josh has had his hand up for quite a while. He's actually trying not to interrupt, so Josh had his hand up.
Well, I just wanted to answer your question because I've heard you ask the question hundreds of times. I think it's been hundreds of times. Why can't we just make an agreement, stick to it? It's normal. It's easy. You say you're going to do something.
Do it anyway, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
We can move into
exactly. And
why reject it? We're doing it.
Well, I'm going to finish with the answer to your question, why. And the reason why it's not so easy for some people is because of the word consequences.
No.
If I don't stay consistent, what's the okay, well, that's my thinking. I could be wrong, but some people get triggered by the word agreement because if they don't keep the agreement, what happens? But please, Amanda, I'd love to learn what you think.
I saw a family today, and they were drinking coffee, and I was sitting next in a cafe, yeah? And they were making agreements about buying a bike. And the whole family was run by agreements. They were actually having zero emotional connection with each other. It was so painful to watch. I nearly wanted to intervene, but I can't. They're on that level. And it's horrible. It's just horrible to see that our whole society has been run by the idea of agreements while we actually don't know each other. It's painful.
Can I add?
I've got to add something.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
There's a smart contract. We're in 2019 now, so our agreements are moving from the human sphere of interaction to the digital sphere of interaction, the computerized zone, and that's where smart contracts take over from agreements. I think there's an issue there. We could have a whole new session on that. Over.
Okay, so may I respond now? Okay, when I bring up the word agreement, it is in that mutual understanding, and the way I'm using it now is to free us from all of this punitive, consequential outcome. Okay? In other words, if somebody interrupts me, I'm not going to kick him out of this room. Okay? That's not what I'm trying to talk about. I'm trying to say, what can we decide together that would make a better experience for all of us? Okay? So I'm not tying together penalty, consequence to agreements, which are very enabling, very empowering, and we all do them, okay? You wear clothes. Why? There's an agreement.
But that's governance.
Why? There's an agreement. You buy food at a certain price. Why? There's an agreement.
You cannot negotiate life. It's not, you're not a child of 5 who's negotiating with his parents.
That's what I'm saying. We renegotiate agreements as needed.
That is governance. That is a collaborative group decision making.
In electrons.
Semantics.
No, not semantics. I think it's a wrong word.
What is a
What
is a better word?
Governance.
What's a better? Sure.
Or stewardship.
Fine. Use whatever word you want. I'm talking about having mutual understanding without the punitive consequences so that we can actually accomplish more and feel more alive. Okay?
I love this.
Why is it so bleeping triggered by one word agreement? I get triggered by the word governance because I fucking hate the government.
I love that you're being so off your, from your toes. I love it, Sam. Finally.
I'm very emphatic that this conversation has happened too many thousands of times. And I want to bring it to a better place. And that's why I don't want to have to go through the same themes over and over again. I want to completely eliminate this notion that there's consequences, that I'm going to actually spank you or whatever for violating one of these behavior agreements. I've been saying that for months.
You might.
Unless you want me to. Okay, fine. Okay. All right.
No, not that. But everything is within a continuum. Like, for example, if Amanda and I have had a lot of really good conversations, and somebody might think that, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Sam.
And I want to say, I want to be able to see a light at the end of the bleeping tunnel Well, we don't have to have the same fucking conversation again. Okay? And I want to completely dispel this punitive, negative notion. Call it agreement, call it alignment, call it governance, whatever. But these are things that we can see, and they have similar structures in my brain versus your brain. Okay? That's what an agreement can look like.
Understanding.
All right? And then let's figure out how we can build together. Okay? We agree to use Zoom. We govern ourselves using Zoom. We agree to take notes. We govern ourselves with taking notes. We agree to not interrupt each other. We govern ourselves by not interrupting together. What fucking difference does it make what word we use?
It matters because you can't play my game without it.
That's right. We have to be specific and we have to have that common understanding. But to choose to be triggered by a single word, to me, is not coming with your best personal presentation. And there, it's a very troubling and triggering thing that I'm saying. I know that, okay? To be triggered by words without giving someone the generosity to say, this person is actually trying to do something constructive. This person is actually trying to move the needle forward. But let me sit back and let me be fucking triggered by a simple word. That is immature.
It's clarifying. It's very clarifying.
Grow up here? Can we evolve beyond that?
Oh yes, you did.
So let's do it.
Good.
We
just
I
did.
think we can. We can. I mean, it is you talk about learnings. You talked about learning, Sam. I think one of the big learnings is just how different people understand the same words. And that's a part of the journey. And but I mean,
don't be fucking triggered every single fucking time. God.
No, but I know, I get that. I just really think it's important though to keep in mind that there is a danger in trying to always capture things in this way, but that doesn't have to happen all the time. But we always have to put it in boxes. But it can happen, and it is painful to see when. It can be very fun, of course. Yeah. So.
Sorry. If you believe that I am not my highest self today, then I apologize.
I believe you're the most Italian I've ever seen you. And I love it.
Wait till I really get going, okay?
Please do.
Something we can agree on is that at one end of the extreme, at one end of the spectrum, you've got a scientist believing that the facts are positive evidence of the facts. There's the truth there. They've got the evidence. And at the other extreme, you've got the fundamentalist, religious, devout person knowing in their heart that they've got the truth and they've got the facts and they're right. So the balance, okay, that's a trendy word again. The balance is somewhere in between. Over.
That's a perfect place for me to interrupt because I've had my hand up. May I?
Then it wouldn't be an interruption. You got to stay.
It depends. We need rules, right? How many times you raise your hand and miss your point before it's an interruption? Anyway, it's to understand if you have the tools to understand. Sometimes people don't want to. They just don't, and they shouldn't bother. So you talk about something else. For example, I was going to mention about Amanda, how she is not certain about this concept called finality of human existence. And personally, her own death, right? So do I engage her on that, or I just say we disagree? Well, it depends. If she's writing in textbooks that all students have to learn that we don't die, then we have to, that she's doing an authoritative thing. So I think it comes down to authoritative. The second point I wanted to make, and with that, if you're just trying to speculate, hypothesize, or whichever side of the yin you want to be in, the yin yang, that's fine. But be aware of your context so that you're not disagreeing false positively. You're actually having a conversation that can be had. Some conversations can't be had, and Alex just mentioned one. I don't think there is any middle ground between an extremist religious person and somebody who is an atheist. I just don't think there is. They believe what they believe. You walk in and they say reason is the antithesis of belief. So if you're going to go with reason, you're already ruining the conversation. So I don't even get a place to stand or sit in that conversation. It's just I believe or I don't. And the conversation's
That's not
over.
what they're actually saying, though, Colin. But
Several places, but hey, that's nuance, Glenn. We can talk about the nuances of different people's beliefs, but I'm just saying at the extremes, that's what's there. And I've personally experienced and lived that. So don't tell me it's not the case.
Well, I've never heard a
hold on, that's
religious
another
person say
conversation.
that. But
well, that's good for you over in Norway.
I've never heard them say that reason is bad. I've never ever heard a single person.
It's
say
nailed
that.
to the wall. It's nailed to the wall at the Creation Museum in Kentucky. So
I've heard others. Well.
Anyway, look, Glenn. Don't get into that. The second one is time. We don't have the time to unpack this and unroll this in an orderly fashion. Therefore, we all try to get our opinion in. That doggy looks a lot different today.
Look at Lucifer.
Like Black Panther.
One cat and 13 dogs. That's quite a fun time. So yeah, so I think one is having the right people to actually be open enough to have a conversation where they might have disagreements or would like to understand each other better somehow. Some people, like for example, religious people don't want to hear. They have their fingers in their ear. They don't want to understand. They already know. They're starting with the answer and working
projection,
backwards.
Colin, projection. You're projecting onto people.
No, that's pretty well it.
You're actually doing that.
No, the Bible has the answer. The Bible is the truth and the answer and the all-be-all unerrant word of God. And science is evil demons trying to get into the schools.
And that's what you're saying. That they're saying.
No, I'm saying that's one. I'm saying that's one conversation that I don't want to have. I can't have that conversation.
But hardly anybody says that. Hardly anybody says that.
Less and less.
Hardly anybody.
100 years ago, it was the law. Okay, so anyway, the other one, so the first thing is having the ability to have a conversation. I think me and Glenn could get into that, but how much time do we have to unpack that? And has the agenda been unwound? I think part of the reason why Amanda got off on the wrong foot with her triggering is because she hasn't been in tune with what the theme of the barn raising has been. I think I'm in line with that. If I had a model poster or some kind of an agenda item that said so, maybe she could have corrected me in a more useful fashion than just saying I'm very wrong.
The theme has not been lived up to in many, many meetings. We go to another thing, and today we had it about experience in life and how we could bring that to each other. So that's to me a very different theme than agreements making. And also I do still remain with the idea that we do governance and stewardship here. But okay.
Yeah, I'm looking for ways to people to have conversations that are useful, that are important, and possibly need to be had. I don't think the conversation between Doug and Sam needs to be had unless they need to be had it. And I would like to facilitate that because it just hasn't been going anywhere. They don't need my facilitation. It would be a great conversation without my facilitation, I'm sure. But I think it would be interesting to try something different. That's all.
Well, I really have to go now, but thank you. It's been very delightful, energizing. So, yeah, call them out. Bye bye.
You better
people.
celebrate your birthday, Glenn.
Yeah,
Better
talk to you
celebrate
later,
that
guys.
41.
Yeah, gonna have
Happy
a good
birthday.
celebration. Quiet celebration. So, bye bye.
Yes. Bye bye. Happy birthday. And Sam, thank you for bringing up the experiences, because I got to know everybody a little better and getting to know you and how you think. And I, I can agree, at least with everybody, that my experiences are useful for me. I can't agree that they're useful for other people. That's up to them to tell me if they are. But I do agree that we all have different experiences. And like Colin always brings up the boy with the beautiful mind, his experience of his reality of seeing numbers and shapes and synesthesia and colors is a very different way than I navigate through this dimension. And I'm also very excited that science is teaching us that the way we all see reality is changing and continues to change, and probably was different in the ancient times. You know, when we were drawing on caves, it was different, and it's different now, and it will be different later. I think if we are still talking in 20 years from now, imagine what the conversation is going to be. So let's agree that our personal realities are different. Our experiences are different.
That's why it is interesting to learn from each other where we both want to do so. Or at least I do. Okay? It's not mandatory. Nobody's kind of like prying inside me to extract that something that they're going to put inside Colin. You know, that's not the model, right? The model is, hey, I realized at some point that I understood something about the world. Maybe I would like to share that. That's what blogs are, by the way. And then maybe somebody else would like to find that. What I'm trying to figure out is, how do we make that more effective? I've got some ideas, but not enough time in this session to go into it. But thanks for playing the game.
Yeah, no, it was fun.
I'm a very big proponent. I know I come off like a know-it-all, but when Google was created, and I used to teach their algorithms at the college, I thought we have an opportunity years from now, that was 20 years ago, to let anyone search for anything they want to search for and hopefully find it. So I'm a big proponent of search engine optimization, so that if someone wants to find something, they can. And I'm really proud of the Google company for creating algorithms that get better and better and better and better. So,
well, I was actually given a chance to consult for companies that wanted to index the entire world. And I said, you're going to have to get over the copyright issue. And it's just astonishing to me how they've been giving a complete free pass on this whole copyright issue. But because they've been given a free pass, they've generated nearly $1 trillion worth of quote unquote corporate equity. We gave that to them by allowing them to do this, and Yahoo before them, and Alta Vista also, right? So we pick and choose who to give power to, who to give rights to, and then we also then choose to go shoot innocent people. This is what this world has come to. And in the meantime, people get billions and billions and billions of dollars while other people starve. So this is the problem that I try to work to rectify.
Yeah, don't be a hater, because there's a little button on every single thing you publish to the website, and there's a little code that you can put so the web crawlers can't see it.
And how
so
many
you can easily not let Google.
How many people know that? Yes, I know about robots.txt, but how many people know that?
I know you know. I do, but probably not many. I don't know how many people know that.
My file's called
I do, you
robots.txt.
I don't know if I trust
again,
that.
Alex?
The Google file on my website it's called robots.txt. Robots.txt is the name of the file. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the crawler sees it, indexes it, and then says, I'm going to forget about this. But did it delete it? Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's very interesting. Yeah.
For the record, I would like not to have this disagreement about the word agreement ever again. I know that's likely to happen, however.
I can't promise you that, because I'm too long in governance.
I wasn't asking you to promise that. I'm just saying that is my intent, okay? To try and get to a place eventually where we can actually move together forward in some way and not be constantly held back by this word agreement or contract or governance, or alignment, or
They
paper.
are all different, and we need to be clarified and then, chosen. And because
I'm just asking you to choose one. Choose one that we can use.
I told you it's something else that you
Fine,
want.
I'll use governance. I'm just saying, syntactically, they're very similar. Semantically, they each come with other connotations and other implications. So they all come, each word comes with negative implications for somebody.
It's not the word. For me, there's a whole world behind that. And that is more than 7 years of work, Sam. So you can't say that's just the semantic stuff. No, I'm sorry.
I think it comes down to types of agreements and the nuance there. I think too much black and white gets involved.
No, it's really, I can really clarify that, but not now.
Well, that would be a great map. And I think Sam and Doug were invited to play that game.
Good.
I agreed.
Doug needs a little bit more encouragement, although my priorities have changed. I said I was going to put out a couple of sample maps. Joachim Strahl had a few ideas on how to bring things into agreement and disagreement and agreement again. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's not hard. And again, I want to impress what Sam was saying, that there's no consequences, there's no right and wrong, as opposed to it's about trying to give you the fairest chance to be understood. That's what it's about.
There is a consequence. Let me reframe the consequence. Josh has had his hand up though, but then I'll rephrase it.
So I'll make an agreement with you, Sam, right here and now, that if you never bring up agreements ever, neither will I.
I will bring up
other people want to.
I will bring up.
I know you probably will, but I'll make an agreement that I will never bring it up. So I'm just saying I will never talk about it. And if we all just stop talking about it, then it's gone.
Bullshit. Are you going to show up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning Pacific time?
Nope.
Okay, that's an agreement then. You're not going to show up.
That's not an agreement. That means my friend is coming to visit.
Yep.
It's not an agreement. It's just a fact that I will
thing.
not be showing up. That's not, see, that's the whole point, Sam, is we don't need to have an agreement. If you asked me to show up tomorrow and I said I would, that would be an agreement. But you just asked me if I was going to and I said I'm not. That's not an agreement. I could just show up, even though I said I'm not.
Semantics.
Yeah, and there's no negative consequence. I'm saying there's no negative consequence, except in one case only, okay? And that's the one that I really like to stress, and that is your own personal integrity. In other words, if you agree to do something and then you don't do it, and then it has no implication on you and your life, okay, then that has no accountability for you. It's not meaningful for you, right? That's the way you choose to live your life. But if it does have meaning, and you do want to actually carry forth with your own agreements that you voluntarily engage in, and where someone else would be disabled or disempowered or something, if you didn't actually carry on with your part of the agreement, then you could choose to reflect on that. And that's part of your own internal structure.
It can be so good for so many reasons to follow your intuition and not to follow up your initial agreement just because something's wrong.
Actually,
you need to get in touch with your intuition, man. Really. Really. Life is not a construct of contracts. If you think that is life and you're now 40 plus, then you missed something.
Nobody said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're projecting a lot onto me. I mean,
no. I think you're missing something vital.
Again, I feel quite judged.
Yes, but I also feel that the conversation is quite dense when everything is brought back to a contractual agreements thing.
It's not a contract.
Then don't use the word again.
Penalty.
And call it governance or
stewardship. That implication.
And broaden the discussion then towards not a set of rules, but a collaboration scheme.
No consequences. Call it whatever you want.
No.
Process. A process of understanding.
Yeah.
I want it broader than a set of rules that is binary. And I think that's needed. And that's my genuine advice to you. Broaden the scope because you're stuck.
You see, we have so many assumptions built into that word that
no.
you can onto this conversation.
It's not my problem. The problem is that you bring it again and again, and nobody seems to understand what is understood. It's a set of rules.
Agreement is keeping others from GCC seeing forward progress.
Come on, it's not about that. You know that. You've done this discussion 100 times. It's not a semantics here. I'm breaking through something that's stuck today. Actually, I'm helping you.
And I'm actually moving on. So I'm actually going to make agreements with those who are comfortable with agreements, and those who are not comfortable with agreements can do what they want.
I would insist to make, governance or stewardship agreements, or, that is a broader spectrum than just a set of binary rules.
Whoever said they're just a set of binary rules?
Well, the time constraint did.
You hear that?
Time constraint does that.
That's what it became to. It became to transactionality, and that's just.
Whoever said anything about transactions?
Lacking intent. It's lacking intent.
Whoever said the intent was lacking?
It is, because you're falling back to the same word again and again.
Yeah, I'm feeling so projected upon.
Good. That's great, because please work it out. Then we'll get back to it next time.
From your notion of what's right and wrong.
Yes,
yeah, Josh,
it's wonderful. Finally, you have a framework that is giving you something.
This is a great time to segue to tomorrow's Sunday unblocking.
Yes.
When we're not being heard and we feel blocked.
Understanding again. Hopefully, we can agree that finding a process of understanding is very, very important. So I would just like to call everything that we're doing today as a process of understanding. I've got certain tools and models. I frame it. I'm not telling you that it's right. I'm telling you, is it useful for this particular example, which we can't get to because we don't have time. There's like 50 examples that we could map out, and that would be useful.
And Sam, it's your house. If you want people to take their shoes off when they come into your house, feel free to make that an agreement. And if it's your Sunday, it's Saturday, barn raising today, you're the host. You can make the agreements. And if people don't agree with you, tell them to fuck off, delete them from your Zoom call. I just think that would make things so much easier for you because they made the agreement.
No,
if they're consistent.
Exactly what this is exactly the conversation I want.
I'm just trying to make it so you can move on and not ever have to have this. Is just put like 4 agreements, 10 agreements, 12, whatever number you want to put. And when people come to the Saturday barn raising, if they don't stick to that, just press the bye-bye button. Bye-bye. And don't be afraid to have consequences for people that don't hold to that agreement. Or you can also say, hi, how are you? You didn't hold to the agreement that you said when you came in here, and hold them to those agreements. Then you're done with the agreement conversation. It's made.
I'm here to co-create some of that.
And that's what's happening. See if they're followed. That's what I'm trying to say, is just see if they're followed. If they're not followed, call people out on it. Don't ask people to come into your house and tell you how your house is supposed to be run. That's fucking crazy. That's insane. It's your house. You make the rules of what you want for your house. And if other people want to help you make those rules, awesome. Then get their participation. But once those agreements are made, move on, man.
That's useful.
Am I able to speak? Yeah. Yeah.
Can we do just quick 30-second checkouts from now on? Unless you want me to just keep the session going?
Yeah.
Who actually wants
I don't know.
the session going indefinitely? Raise your hands. Who wants to have a round of quick checkouts? Okay, Josh wants to keep it going.
And I want to have a round of quick checkouts. I want both. I want to have an agreement that this is over.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of things hanging out there, and I think it's a possibility to tie up a couple of those loose ends, although not very many of them. I think one of the themes is that we're not looking for consequences, we're looking for understanding. There can be consequences to that. That's number one. Number two, we're not making necessarily, in my opinion, agreements of how to format this show. We're making agreements of how people with good ideas can communicate and can coexist and so we're really talking philosophy, like Josh said today.
That's about 10 seconds.
So, I'm thinking that there's a possibility that there's different nuances of levels of how to run a show versus how do people communicate versus how do people understand. And I'm going for the understanding, and it's not simple at all.
I just love the schwung of things today. Sam, you can be Italian as often as you want.
You haven't seen me at my worst.
Good. Then I have something yet to see.
It's ugly.
Beautiful. I love it.
Good, let it out, man. That's beautiful. Let it out. Express it. Get ugly. Be you. Be real, man.
Yeah.
I wouldn't encourage that.
The 2-year level of irritation, okay? Maybe at 3 years I get really ugly. Or it may be 2 years and 2 months. You know, who knows?
Well, I'm interested to see if the agreement we made on Sunday is going to be moved forward tomorrow, because Sam asked for a understanding with Doug, and Doug agreed to it. So I'm interested where that went. I totally misunderstood how that agreement was made. It was done at the end, really quick. So no movement has happened since then that I'm aware of, and that's been a week. So
Actually, just to set the record straight, there's been some Facebook texts on that where you and I and Doug have gone back and forth. So Doug did suggest last Sunday, hey, let's take it offline. We did take it offline to Facebook. We don't actually have a firm action plan, but there was some action. We can bring it up.
No positive movement, I should say, towards any kind of a understanding of what we're going to do.
All agreement. Make an agreement.
I think understanding can also be about something that you don't have to do. You just are understanding.
How do you know if somebody wants to or not?
Stop. This is a round of checkouts. We gotta do
okay.
checkouts before we dive back in, okay?
It's just so frustrating. You're right, Sam.
I gotta
Anybody else
go.
wanted to check out before we continue?
Yeah, I'm all smoked out. I can't smoke any more cigarettes and drink coffee. This is my coffee
Another
talk with
cigarette,
you
John.
guys.
Another cigarette.
I think I can't smoke any more cigarettes. I'm done. This is it. Like I'm gonna have to start smoking this way.
Yeah, how many in the last
Like
week?
I try to have, my limit is 5 in a GCC call, and I usually light up the same one a few times. And I think I've hit right now. I'm at 5. Yep, I have a smoke limit.
We're about to push you to 6.
Yeah, let's call it a day.
Okay. Alex is gone. Colin checked out. I checked out. Josh checked out. Amanda, have you checked out? Okay. Now we can.
I agree to love you, Sam.
Now we can continue.
That's my agreement. I agree to love you for as long as I can, even when you get angry and mean later on. I'm gonna agree to love you. Nothing you can do about it. Take it.
You know, one way of doing.
Thank you for helping Fallon too.
Sorry.
What's that?
I was about to say.
I was just thanking you, Sam, for helping Fallon. I really appreciate that, and all the help that you do with all the community of all the different people that we know. That's why I love you, because you really are here to trying to help people. Like, I can see that. It's obvious. It's clear. Even if you get fucking frustrated at fucking agreements and fucking words. Like, I get it, man.
Hey, thanks for saying that. I just wanted to just lay one small thing out there, okay? Doug talks often about doing human beings differently, human being 2.0. Part of that can be, let's take all the things we do, okay, and look at how we might be able to bring that into our new consciousness. So whether it's words, whether it's technology, whether it's ourselves, whether it's interactions, whether it's nature, how do we then use them in a new and hopefully better way. I would invite that with some of the words that we use. Let loose of some of the negative implications from the old frame, but use the parts that are useful. There's been hundreds of thousands of years of civilization. You can't say all of that was fucked up. Some of that brought us to where we are right now, whether we like it or not. So there's some aspects of it that serve the purpose and were useful. Now it's up to us to say, does it still serve that purpose? Is that still going to be good for us? Or can we dispense with it and can we create it anew? If you don't like a certain word, come up with a better word. If you don't like certain implications of it, be explicit that those implications don't apply, which is what I was trying to do. But use the pieces of it that are useful. And do that thoroughly. Don't do it unconsciously saying, oh, I'm now human being 2.0, but I don't like this word, I don't like that word, and I'm triggered by this, and I'm triggered by that, and oh, don't do this to me, and don't wear shoes into my house. Is that really being different?
Yes.
Or might you want to do it more consciously?
I have a formula.
Go ahead.
Intentions times actions equals let's not fucking talk about this shit ever again. Just stick to your intentions and do what you say. Be who you are. Just if you have an intention to do something, just do that. And if you're not doing that, someone will fucking call you out. If you're acting like an asshole, someone's going to punch you in the face. If you're giving love, someone will give you a hug back. It's really not complicated. Just if your intentions are to do something, try to take those actions and do it. And if you're actually doing it, you don't need to define it. It's already happened. That's the experience. That's the success. Done.
On the white side of the yin, sure. But on the dark side, they don't care. So what do you do about that?
Ooh. Is that Lao Tzu?
I'm just saying that you're living in an idealistic frame set where I'm not trying to preach to the choir. I'm trying to understand the other side, why they think that I'm so wrong. Like, what Amanda's saying about me actually interests me.
Fuck them. Fuck those people. If
They have
think you're
authority.
wrong, that's up to them.
If they have authority, I'm even more interested. If they're a friend, that's
kick
one
them
thing.
in the nuts.
Wait a minute. That means if
Go
they don't
ahead.
have authority, you don't
Go
care.
ahead and see how far you get, how close you get.
Why is authority so important to you?
Well, it's pretty well everything that runs the human race.
We don't have to.
Tell that to the authority. Tell that to the authority who knows they're right and you're wrong.
We are doing that, by the way, Colin.
And I highly agree with what Sam said about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's some things I hear that come through in discussions we have. You just have to let them go because somebody's coming from a frame set, a mindset, a worldview that they're very invested in. And it doesn't matter what you say, like how we got into our skirmish, I think is a bit of that, Amanda, but I think we have goodwill towards each other. I've come across that where people don't have such goodwill towards me. So, it's very frustrating. And yeah, it's not the easy cases I'm looking for. And, if Doug wants to be more clear on what it is he means by, he says there's no such thing as arguments or disagreements, or there's no need for them or whatever. Well, what do you mean by that? Is it just semantics? Like, what would you do in case A, B, and C? Like, let's walk that through and let's see how Sam's obvious benefit is no longer a benefit, because I see the benefit.
So I came just in the discussion between you and Doug, Sam. So I'm adding fuel to the fire today. Awesome.
Well, I think it's something that Josh has also been very aware of and has at times challenged the different semantics going around and saying, wait, let's just stop and try to understand what we're talking about here. Could we just have a meeting and understand what we're talking about? And I just want to put a little bit of a methodological process to it. That's it. I don't want to control it. I just want to make it fair.
Can I offer a model?
Everybody's going to offer a model, yes, as we go forward, but we can't even get started.
I have a model of 4 worlds, and the disagreement agreement model is world 2. It means that people have boxes for everything. And if there's something unknown, they make a new box. And they box it around it, and then they fit it into their world, because then it has a separate understanding, so you don't have to take care of it, and then it's okay. But
That
the world of
process may
dog is
fit.
more like world 4. It's more like, where unity is all there, and then you do things differently. And so I could send you that, for example. But it's really, sometimes people from different worlds don't understand each other. And this is a very oversimplified model of a friend of mine. It's very interesting. World 1, for example, is me against the other.
As long as we use words, we're in the world that I live in.
I'm sorry?
As long as we use words, we're in the world that I live in. In other words, your use of your words and my use of my words are not going to be identical. And that's natural. There's no box. We're just exploring mutual understanding. That's it.
You really don't understand what I'm saying. There's a big book about this. I'm trying to simplify for you what it is. But please don't oversimplify what I brought in.
You should explain it in a way
I
that
did.
you understand it. No, you just did about boxes. Where are these boxes coming from?
Come on.
I kind of half agreed where she was going, but I think it's all temporary.
Viewpoints as in we are not connected. There's people that always say that always bring up differences, right? I am different. I'm unique. I have a different viewpoint. The idea that you can have a different viewpoint comes from the world of boxes, where everything has a separate world.
Is evidence.
Sorry?
The fact that we're talking about this is evidence that what you're saying and what I understand is different.
You really don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe I need to send it. I don't know.
No, I really don't get it. At this point, I really don't get it. I'm really trying to learn.
Yeah, I'll send it. So the model is based on me and the other, and the relation between yourselves and the other, and how that can be differently motivated. It contains a couple of values that are different per world, and also a couple of words that are often used in a certain world. You actually get a overview of how people could respond to you when they're coming from different angles.
Yeah, I completely understand what you just said. I believe that.
Yeah. One of those angles.
Can you send the link?
I can. I have to look it up. 1 sec.
Okay, send it, because I learned a word from you, Sam, called grok. And when someone's trying to explain something and you're not grokking it, then there might need to be another baseline. So let her send it to you, look at it, because a lot of times the languaging gets messed up. So I'm just trying to keep from the misunderstanding.
I'm not using language based on words that I think are from books that you haven't read. I'm using language as I think normal people understand these words, and I'm trying to use simple language so that we can communicate. But if you're using words from a book that I haven't read, and you're making that a requirement for me to understand this conversation, then is that really communicating?
I was explaining it, and I was on the way of explaining it. I was also clarifying it, and I'm still clarifying it.
Right.
So I just sent it. The English mode is underneath, so you have to scroll down. So skip the Dutch part. It's also an old version. I just want to warn you. And the thing is that in World 1, it's a very ugly world. That is me against the other. It's where you totally do not trust each other. And, where there's absolute dominance is the thing to go with. And in World 2, you're kind of neutral, You allow other people to have other viewpoints, and you yourself you are entitled to have your own viewpoint. You know these people, right? You meet them all the time. This is how offices are being run. And that's why we have rules, so everybody can keep their own neutral viewpoint, and there's this place for everything. Everything is not debated. There's sort of a neutrality, but there's also a sort of carelessness, because nobody actually gives a fuck about the other, because everybody is just living for themselves. That's what I mean with box. You have your own box, and you don't mind the other box. You do your own world, and the other person lives its own world. And you have neutral agreements, and so the world of agreements is very much, to me, tied to World 2. You have World 3, where you get a growing how you say that? independence of individuals in it. And I don't say that the guy who worked it out did it fantastic. I think he's confused with world 3 and 4 and up. It's okay. But there you see the world of freelancing and entrepreneurship, and where people start to have ambition, and you know that they have, how you say, the cooperative temporary collaborations and stuff like that. And then you get somewhere world 4 where there's a collaboration. Well, this is just an example of how you could look at worlds and understanding and angles between people. This is one of many models.
I'm a little triggered. I'm a little triggered because I think that basically that's what I said.
No.
Yes, there's one of my realizations.
You're talking about viewpoints of world 2.
One of the realizations I had growing up, Sam asked, that people do not all think like me. All right. So there's these different boxes that people are in, and there's different worldviews. There's also the seriousness of authority to make it something that's you need to confront, as opposed to just somebody's belief that they're never going to die, which I don't have to confront. But it'd be interesting to have that conversation with a friend, but not to make somebody feel like I'm trying to make you wrong. I find that a lot of the conversations where there's a disagreement are sabotage due to feelings. And so I would put not only the yin yang, the science and the humane side of things, but I'd also put the individual personalities that are involved, and another model for the worldviews. And with all of those three things triangulating into the conversation, you might have a chance to understand somebody. That's kind of what I'm saying. But I really, I think a lot of those things are in alignment in this group, where an experiment could be had between Doug and Sam about what is this deal about agreement, disagreement, understanding, or what does that look like? I don't see anybody actually trying to parse out the nuance without telling them that this is science and feelings aren't allowed. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's consequences. I'm saying there are these boxes, and what does your box look like? What does my box look like? We each have a plane of understanding, like the pieces that we're going to play together. So where's the game board, and how do we know that it's going to be a fair game and somebody isn't just going to be yanking the game board around and you know, pulling politics or pulling authority on me? How do I know that what I have to say is going to be understood, and how do I know you're going to try to understand me instead of tell me I'm wrong?
I agree to a certain point, Colin. So within world 2, you're clarifying the boxes. But if you implement also the other worlds, then you're missing a couple of tiers, a couple of understandings by doing so.
Yeah, no, I'm saying there's lots of models that we can build and bring, and I think that's an interesting thing we could do. Like, what's your model? So you could bring that. Heiner's got some models.
Yeah.
Josh has got some models. Everybody has models. I think these models can help us hash it out some nuance. And think about it as you know, scissors and crayons and duct tape, and let's do this thing, and you know, let's see if we can't shake these models and get some value out of them. Like, why did they have this model? Like Sam was saying, you know, whether you like it or not, this model exists. Or look at this, we've made up a kind of a new model by understanding that now it's a global question. It's no longer just a nationality question. Or is it a nationality question? Where did nationality come from? You know, what animals are actually nationalistic? Humans. That's the only ones I know. Anyway.
Well, most animals are territorial.
Yeah, we lost it.
Yeah, I think there is a parallel there. Yeah.
I think the problem here, as I see it, is one where one is quick to point out the failings without leaning in to understand the implications, and doing so with triggers. You had a very strong trigger in my observation, Amanda, that I was level 2 because you saw the word agreement.
Absolutely.
You didn't actually see all of my other behavior. Excuse me. I got a call coming in.
The duck. Colin is smiling.
All right, I love you guys. I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna say goodbye just because I have a friend stuck in traffic that's coming to visit, and that's why I didn't think I'll make the meeting tomorrow because my friend's coming to stay tonight.
Enjoy. Nice
So,
to see you.
I'll see you showing up.
Thank you. Nice to see you guys, and thanks for a great conversation. And I think if we just keep doing stuff, it'll just keep getting more fun or more annoying. But something's gonna happen. So.
Thank you.
I don't think we need to define it all. We just need to experience
You'll get it.
Some people will like it, and some people won't. That's life.
I think there's a game afoot, and it's not necessarily owned by me.
Let's play. I'm always down to play. I'm just happy that I'm in my body and in this dimension. And I think there's other dimensions out there that I don't want to play in.
Summarize the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. Much love. I'm saying goodbye. Cheers. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Amanda.
It's lovely. Josh really gets it. You know, sometimes you have to poke something so that it moves. Otherwise, you keep stuck. So it's not about the words. It's that poking where it's stuck. And then you use words for it. and it's quite fascinating. And I think you really love for the world to be negotiable. You would love people to be reasonable and have the ability to make agreements all the time.
Again, a lot of negative trigger around words like negotiate, like, you know, and I just find that completely unnecessary. I can see the benefits of World 3, and I can see the benefits of World 4, but I can also see the benefits of World 2, as you described. And you seem to be quite so judgmental about the badness of each of these things.
I'm sorry about that, but yes, I am.
And you're very prescriptive in that judgment.
Yeah.
And so I actually feel being imposed upon.
Yeah, that you should move up a bit to World 3 and 4.
Yeah, that I should, right? That I should, right? I'm actually happy where I am. I'm always willing to learn, but I'm feeling a lot of judgment and a lot of prejudice and a lot of actually not seeing in how I conduct myself in other forums. And so I actually feel very judged and disregarded.
It provoked you to be
using
angry.
The agreement.
It was good.
Or merely
you finally stood your thing, you know.
Whereas you're bringing all of this judgment to my life. I'm actually quite happy with the way I, want to understand things. So I'm leaning in right now. But I'm leaning in with someone that I'm conscious of who actually believes that I'm a lesser enlightened individual. I feel like
that's the way to bring it home.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I love that I provoked you because you were more than yourself. Now we're doing it. Now we're not going from agreements. Finally, you shouted, you screamed.
No.
You're
not
here.
So easy. Not so
it.
easy. Not so easy. And I'd like to take it back and say, Sam, not to prolong this conversation too much longer, but as far as working in the open and what we started to do online, and that's why what progress has been made between you and Doug about agreements. I was under the misinterpretation that I would have some play in moderating that with a map that we prepared, so that at least we had an agenda to start with, so that we don't get into this too much of this generality and waste 45 minutes just getting there. So, save that 45 minutes and ahead of time, and then have a really good feel of what it means to lean in, so that we have a very positive experience where, we could actually move point by point through the benefits that are to be gained, the lessons to be learned, which I think is the main thing. The disagreement, I think, is mostly semantic and worldview, and where the worldviews don't need to conflict, they shouldn't. And I think that it's a very emotional thing that gets in the way. So there might even be personality differences. This is another thing that I'm considering with these people adapters, but I'm not looking to bring in my science. I'm just looking to give it a little bit of a draft run. That's what I was thinking. What were you thinking was going to happen?
Just very brief. I thought there was just going to be a conversation between Doug and me about this word disagreement. That's all.
Okay.
I'm looking forward
Because
to it.
Let me answer a different question. Okay, let me answer a different question because I'm almost tapped out myself. It's been 3.5 hours. But
Yeah.
let me say the following. Okay, supposing, and this is very hypothetical. Okay, Amanda,
Yes.
very hypothetical. Okay,
Okay, I listen.
supposing there was a domain where it actually understood something that you did not understand. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And suppose you were curious about that domain.
Yeah.
Suppose I actually labeled you as someone who did not understand and then laughed at you.
Yeah. Okay.
How would that work? How would most people feel about that?
I hear you, but still, you don't know that you're also triggering, because you put this concept on me, and I'm just also fighting to get out of that. So you don't see that.
And more true, my belief is mine could be incomplete, and I want to learn something.
Good.
But you're laughing at me, and I'm leaning in.
Yeah. Okay. But
yeah, I've had that experience with Amanda too. It's just her way. It's just her. She's a bit of a provocateur, but
right.
You have to find common ground on certain topics. That's all.
Maybe
I find it very hard to bring.
I laughed at you. Okay. Maybe
but I find it very hard to bring because there's a lot of emphasis on words, agreements, understanding.
Use words.
No, this is not just words.
Use words.
There are words from a certain realm.
Words today.
No, they are words of a certain realm, and in that realm,
they're the ground that you give
no
up.
Space.
Your worldview. Different worldviews.
No
your worldview with your world.
There is no space for certain other understanding. So to bring it in, I nearly have to poke you. Otherwise, I cannot even make my point.
No.
If that was the topic, yes, we could, and that's kind of where I was mistaken. My participation with Doug and Sam, because I had talked to Sam about doing some experiments and having some examples and how that would have been a really good example. And then Sam brought up, as Colin has been mentioning, why don't we try that? And that is what I thought that was. But what Sam said that was different. It's just him and Doug figuring it out, which I said as well is fine. So when I expressed the fact that I thought it was differently, both Sam and Doug mentioned that, I don't want to help you design this game in real time. And that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking to have a little bit of moderation during the talk where neither Sam nor Doug is in charge of the conversation, but in charge of trying to put forth their understanding in a way that is minorly disruptive, which I mentioned. But if we think it out ahead of time, it should be enhanced, not so much disruption. If we just did it off the cuff in the middle of a meeting, bring out a map or whatever tool, it's not going to work that well. So that's why I say preparation and getting ready is important. It's kind of my vision, trying to speak it more clearly. And it was the topic of the unblocking last week that I felt unactualized because people are not getting that idea. And I'm not doing this thing full time. So I have to kind of do it in the flow. So I have to have people lean in with me to do this. So how do I make them comfortable? How do I make them trust? This is what I thought was already discussed, but all of that got, I think, forgotten in the passion of, I'm going to talk to Doug and I'm going to talk to Sam. I don't know. I really don't know. Or it could be that I'm just over conflating what I think I'm trying to do and whether people are actually listening to me and nodding in positivity, or they're just saying, is he going to stop talking soon? Doug has said how valuable what I do is, and Sam says, oh, that's very, very important to have a memory. And then when I actually pull out the tool to try to do a little bit, Sam's not pulling back so much as saying he doesn't understand exactly what I want to do. I'm saying, well, let's get together and talk about that. What do we expect is going to happen? And I've heard nothing from Doug. No boo. Like I even private messaged him and got nothing back. So, and I know he's a busy man, and I'm not saying this is on high importance. I'm just saying, I think my participation in this group is culminating to this kind of a thing of examples. So I'm looking for examples. I think Doug and Sam are awesome people who could do that. I was even looking for a moderator so that I don't have to do it, so that they could be part of this as well, so that I could just be concentrating on getting the facts and only interrupt if I get confused. And somebody else who's better at moderating, like I think Peter is it Peter Chase? Another one was
Jones?
Yoakum Straw. Yeah. So anyway, but it's not coming together. But you know, I'm on the long haul here. So if this doesn't happen, you guys have your discussion, succeed or fail, and we could also try again after. Like getting ready has many, many shapes. I'm just trying to get ready. That's all. That's kind of the idea. I feel heard with that. I think you understand where you might have. Do you recall me saying those things, Sam? How these examples would be useful?
Yes, but we didn't actually talk about how the talk would happen, and I was concerned that if there was a lot of back and forth regarding where do we put this node, where do we put the other node, that would interrupt the flow of the actual discussion. That was my only.
I think you guys would decide, because it's pretty crayon experience. It's not a super complicated thing. It gets complicated, but only as complicated as you two want to make it, with all your guys' nuance. Right? How do we classify that new thing? Does it fit in the fear circle?
I'll invite another one, okay? You clearly heard, I had a disagreement about the word disagreement. Today, we heard that Amanda and I have a disagreement about the word agreement. So
Absolutely.
we could have such a conversation between Amanda and me about the word agreement.
Yes, I agree. And I think that if we pulled out clips and advertised it, I think our viewership would go up from 20 or 30 to 50 to 70. I'm just guessing.
No, I have a face for radio.
No, Sam, that's not true. It's your mind we're after.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
I'm happy to see the real Sam screaming from your toes. It's lovely. It's like all these words are protecting the you to come out.
I heard a lot of words used by you on what I was saying that I never said. There are a lot of implications that you claim I have that I never implied.
Yeah, but
so
I do.
Come through so strongly, feels like judgment.
It
feels like imposition. Okay?
I don't know.
It feels like you want to have power over and also power to judge.
I have power to judge.
Label.
I do not only want it, I have it, and I do it.
Right. And you do it in such
Just
a way.
to clarify that, so that it will not be a misunderstanding. Okay. I did judge it.
Yes. Okay.
And I'm taking full responsibility for it. I'm fine with that.
And
I miss that you are fine with that for yourself.
Implication to your understanding of what I'm saying, which doesn't serve me. It may serve you, but it doesn't serve me.
No, you try to drag everything into the neutral, but what we actually want is
no. See, again, you're projecting what you think into what I said. Again,
you're trying to create. It's lovely that you were you today. Please keep it that way. I think it's wonderful. I think it's good.
But you're trying to change me. See, I don't feel.
No, I did change you because I provoked you and you came out.
I believe that. Because you want me to change the way I think.
It's not about you thinking. You came out in a way that you normally don't come out. And that's wonderful.
Why is it wonderful?
Because you were really you and you were not hiding behind something.
I've always been me. I'm not hiding.
I don't disagree with you. But now you were more you.
I was always me.
Yeah, but now you show
in the way that I show up.
Yeah, you showed up differently.
Exactly. That's not a different me. That is still me.
No, differently. I love the way you showed up because it shows more your colors as you are, I think.
No, see, you can see me in January of 2018, for example, when I was having similar conversations with Tammy.
Good.
Now we're having conversations about, topics, about woo, for example,
It's all fine. But I think
if it were
trying to make
it would
something
not be quite so prescriptive. See, in your mind, it's not quite so fine.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I provoked you.
If we're fine, why not let it be?
Because it's so neutral, nobody buys it, and everybody's talking around it.
No.
I'm being honest with you. Why do you have 100 conversations about the word agreements without anybody provoking you? I'm happy I provoked you after 2 years.
in that same way for everybody else.
It doesn't matter. Why do you want to have a debate? Why do you want to win by
All I
debate?
want to say is I'm showing up explaining why I think agreements are empowering and enabling. And
It's not disempowering. I empowered you to become angry, and I'm happy about it.
No. I'm saying how I believe agreements can enable and empower collaboration. Okay, and then I get a lot of judgment about, oh, that's so.
I do have judgment about that, and it's a long trajectory and a long experience. And it's not only words.
You're interrupting me.
It's not only words that I'm saying. There's a long experience about this, and you're trying to bring it back to words, and that's not it. I clearly said it's about governance and stewardship, and that rules are not, it's not that binary at all.
Who said I was binary?
Who said it was governance?
I am now saying that.
But that's your worldview, and you're entitled to
no,
that.
by saying, by saying that it's either agreements understood as rules and that is helping people or not.
Rule, Amanda. Not once did I use the word rule today. Do you hear what you're doing?
Agreement is a transactional understanding. And we can go over this long.
Agreement.
I think you're tired. I think we need another time.
A lot of old frame thinking.
No, that's not old frame thinking. You're using old words. And they come with old frame thinking. If I use the word governance, you are triggering. You're not even aware of what it is. Did you ever use a Lumio thread? Did you ever take part in a community? Did we speak about community rules? Did we speak about our different experiences? No, every time you reuse the word agreements, and that is making people misunderstand. You're not introducing it in a broader context.
Was birthed out of the governance model.
Oh, come on. You're not introducing a broader context, and now you're attacking me for doing so. That's wrong.
That's so bold.
I'm actually broadening your word agreements.
Group.
I'm broadening your word agreements.
You don't understand the history of this group, Amanda.
I don't care.
Accuse me of
I have been taking part a long time enough. No, you're distracted by other questions. Sorry, that's really stupid.
You didn't understand.
That's really stupid. That's really stupid.
Think about governance models.
I'm just suggesting that we broaden this context a little bit more in another conversation, but not right now. And I think that's correct. We're all tired.
I can agree to that.
Good.
I think again, it's coming down to semantics and worldview where we haven't had enough time to experience it. I agree with Sam. You have not read the book of Sam. You do not.
Yeah, well, he has not read my WeShare book or whatever. So, who cares? Who cares?
Yours on me.
We don't need external reference or authority to be right or not.
We do need to take the time. We do need to take the time to understand one another.
Yes,
we do.
I agree.
And that means when I say read the book of Sam, I mean understand the things that he has brought and his intention, which is not what I hear.
The same goes for my intention. I also have an intention. I want to clarify, but not right now.
There are people who I have come across trying to use the word agreement that I would appreciate your intervention in that regard, but Sam isn't one of them. I'll just say that.
It's needed because the word agreements is too much narrowing for the whole context we're talking about. Yes, I am against the word agreements. I'm sorry.
I'm proposing the word understanding process. How's that?
Yeah, that's much better because it's broader. And then we can actually have a conversation so it's not narrowed.
But I think agreement is a nice tidy little way to set it up for the barn raising within the context that Sam has set.
It didn't happen in 2 years. Come on.
No. You can't throw that at him.
Oh, yes, I can.
No, I don't think so.
I can, and I will. Because
Sam has come along, guys. I think Sam has come along.
We can do better.
Oh, I'm sure we can, but what time do we have? What kind of investment are we putting into it?
Oh.
What agreements have we made to make it better? There you go. Agreements are implicit in our lives.
No, you're not. No.
Can you name one agreement that's positive? Any agreement at all? Can you think of any agreement that's positive? Any at all?
Actually, no.
In any context?
Actually, no.
Okay, well, that's interesting because that's where Doug and Sam are.
Because I would love the word covenant, which is like a promise, which is totally different than a transactional belief of
a covenant. I think a covenant is more dangerous to change. See, Sam has talked about RFCs, requests for comments, where we make some agreements, but we also leave them open-ended where they can be changed. It also lines up with the idea of some of the newer holographic consensuses that
You
are
can
coming out.
deepen your covenant too.
It actually lines up with the holographic consensus as well. It's just how do we have the tools to manage it without our worldviews untying our shoelaces on us?
Yeah. I would love to have a conversation that has that depth and variety as you're now sketching it, but that's not what's happening here.
Sketching it exactly. Who's going to play with me?
You made a number of assumptions, Amanda.
Sorry?
If I sketch it myself, it's just fine.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Sam?
It's not happening because you made a number of assumptions about the word agreement. And
I do. And I want to clarify that, but if you're not open, you know, like it's like
in what I'm saying, then you're going to stick with your assumptions.
Yes, because I have a track record, I have experience, and I care about it.
Okay.
I care about it. And you cannot just say, well, agreements only means this for me, so you have to go with it. No, I don't. In my world, it means something.
You're doing exactly the same thing. It means that to you, and you're not allowing me to actually expand the notion.
No, you cannot. It's transactional. How many times do I have to say it?
What is transactional in this context?
Everything.
Who said transactions are bad?
I did.
How's that frame?
Yeah, well, I have a long track record. Maybe we should have an interview. Then I can expand on these things.
Amanda.
Then I can expand on these things, but they do mean something. And you cannot just say, oh, I just use semantics. No.
I think
it's
so.
not just that.
Agreement. It means something to most of the world, okay? People make billions of agreements. You can't think of
so what? Do we have to stay there?
Yes, because you said you could not think of a single one that was positive. So you're entirely against this notion of agreement the way most people understand agreements.
Yeah, that sounds really bad, right? That's very interesting. And you put that on recording. That's funny. You don't take into account the consciousness in which communities are functioning. And if you are a consciously functioning community, you have a governance structure or a stewardship structure. You do not have just a single set of agreements. That's the most primitive form of arranging society in a hierarchical form for people that are non-self-authorized. I'm sorry, I'm self-authorized, so I'm beyond that. I do not care about agreements anymore. I want another structure that's more conscious. Am I clear?
I don't think what Sam is saying is it's all agreements, black and white. You either agree or you don't, and these are the consequences. But I do think that you've been up against things like that in certain situations. So in quadrant 17A,
I have been extremely through.
Yeah, in quadrant 17A.
I have a rich experience, I would say.
That's called baggage, Amanda.
No, that's called rich experience, not baggage.
Baggage too.
And that means that I use other words because I brought into it nuance, and I'm not going back
those other words.
To a simplified version. I'm not.
Well, I think we need this game even more than ever.
I think so too. But simplified version is not going to cut it for me because I have too much to bring. So I'm sorry.
Where you start. It's where you start to build upon the complexity. It gets complex quick.
No, it's never getting complex after you make it simple.
I don't agree with that. I think things are only as complex as they need to be as a good.
Oh, come on.
It shouldn't be any
I'm
more
just going to have dinner now, guys. I'm just a bit tired. I'm just being honest.
Thanks for your opinions, Amanda. They are very heartfelt. And I'm sure
Thanks for.
But
I love the emotion.
I do feel you're giving Sam a little bit of flack and a hard time. So
I think I give you back your power. And I love it.
Provocateur. Okay, guys. See you tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Thanks. See you tomorrow.